Good morning, all. I welcome you this morning to our Development and Finance Committee, August 10th, 20 meeting. And I would like to welcome particularly our Commissioner Merkowitz, who has joined our committee, and we look forward to your leadership and energy as we work forward. This is exciting committee with lots of activity, so we welcome you. And I also would like to just take note of the celebration that we experienced this last week in introducing solar to a development, Paddington Square. It is an exciting first for the state, and I know it puts us on the cutting edge, and that it's something we're all deeply committed to. So it is a serious equity progress step, and we're grateful and excited to be able to make it happen. And so with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is the approval of the Development and Finance Committee minutes of June 25. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move approval of the minutes. You need the seconds because Jeffrey wasn't at that meeting.
All right, so I'll abstain.
And I will second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And we have a meaty agenda ahead of us. So let's move into the first item of the Hurston. And Kareem, welcome as our acting executive director in your acting executive director capacity. And who's going to lead us through this material?
Good morning, commissioners. Marcus Irvin, acting director of development here at HOC. The first agenda item we have will be presented by Paul Vinciguerra in the construction division. It is for the Westside Shady Grove Building D, approval to select Kim Engineering for construction materials testing and third-party inspector, and authorization for the acting executive director to execute a contract in accordance with the request for proposal 2265. With the opening, Paul, I'll turn it over to you to review the slides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we go down to the third slide, please? Okay, too far. I want to go up to the executive summary. That one right there. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Westside Shady Grove Building D is a 268 unit apartment building with 81 affordable units, 21,000 square feet of retail space. It has 7,400 square feet of office space as well. The third-party testing of construction materials during the project is integral.
Were you able to get in? Because I don't see you on the screen. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Please, can you mute?
Yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, the third-party testing of construction materials during the project is integral to quality assurance and quality control for a new construction project. Testing building materials such as concrete is required by Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services and by Montgomery County Code. Okay, request for proposal 2265 was issued on May 19th for construction testing materials and third-party inspections for Westside Shady Grove Building D. We received 3 responses ranging from $136,500 to $330,000 $36,385. Of the 3 responses, Kim Engineering attained the highest average score among the evaluators as it pertains to price, management plan, execution, and minority female disabled persons participation. Kim Engineering is teaming with SECA. Together, both are certified minority business firms. They will provide 100% of the services for this project. The award of reward of request for proposal 2265 will be funded from the previously approved development budget. Okay, if we can go down a couple slides, we'll show the scoring. Next one. One more. I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Perfect. This gives you lets you look at the average scores and what each firm scored. Can we go down to, up a little bit, please, so you can see the scoring sheet right there.
Slide 9. Yes. Slide 9,
Okay.
please.
Right. Well, basically, this is how the firms priced each of the scope of work for the project. You can see the score. All right, can we go down to the summary page, please? Next one down. Thank you. Okay, so will the Development and Finance Committee join staff's recommendation to the commission to approve the selection of Kim Engineering as construction material testing and third-party inspector for the new construction of Westside Shady Grove Building D project, and to authorize the acting executive director to execute a contract with Kim Engineering for $336,385. And I'll take questions if you have any.
Yeah.
See,
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
no, go ahead, Jeff.
I wanted to ask if you could go back up to the
Scoring.
scoring. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Page 17 or slide 17.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's actually slide 9.
I'm sorry, slide 9,
yeah.
excuse me.
Slide 9 of this.
Right. The scoring summary.
Does somebody have control of the?
I do not. Can we move the slides? Can we move the slides up, please, to slide 9, the scoring summary? One more page
One
up.
more.
One more up, right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So I just had some questions on
sir.
the pricing scoring.
Yes.
And because it, if you compare this to the next slide, I mean, here you've got sort of, it looks like Hill Carnes has the top score.
Right, for pricing.
Kim has the second highest, and then Stratfield the lowest. But if you scroll down to the next page, to the actual cost, Stratfield has the lowest, which I would have thought would have resulted in the highest score, and Kim is the highest, which I would have thought would be the lowest, and and likewise Hills being in the middle actually has the highest score. So
Okay.
could you explain?
Yes, absolutely. What happened was that Stratified submitted their proposal and they did not include enough hours. They did not follow the Bozzuto construction schedule like the other 2 firms did for the number of hours it's going to take to do the inspections and the construction material testing. So we deemed them to be too low and not be able to perform the project for the number they gave us. And we were fearful that they would, if we selected them, that we'd be hit with a lot of change orders at the end of the project, making them eventually the highest bidder. So.
Got it. Okay, that helps me understand that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Anything else, please?
Question on something like that. Did we have any conversation with them or?
No, we did not. We did not reach out to them. I mean, We just went by what they submitted. And the reason for Hillis Carnes not having the highest score is they did not send in their management plan, which hurt them on the overall points. So, but no, we don't reach out to the firms once they submit their paperwork. We evaluate them on what they've submitted. I mean, there's the procurement sent out, there's a checklist sent out with every request for proposal. So they can check off and make sure everything's sent in per what we requested, and Stratify just didn't follow the instructions they were provided.
Paul, in the future, could you note that on these scoring summaries so that we understand how you arrived at if they were
Yes, ma'am.
non-responsive, that explains, so we know ahead of time that
Okay.
they did not comply or the rationale for the recommendation. That would be very helpful to us.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I think the package should be revised for the commission when it goes to the commission in September, because the numbers are just so disparate, and there needs to be some explanation. And for the record, we need to put that in there because.
Okay. Yes, sir. Well, I'll revise the packet before it goes to the commission. Thank you.
How many did we send the RFP out to? Do you know?
It was advertised publicly, so basically to everybody. I mean, it was put out into the public for bid for proposals. So we didn't send it to anyone specific. We do it like we advertise all our public requests for proposals through procurement.
So I'm sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
when we do RFPs, we
Yes, sir.
don't send out to the known contractors and advertise. We just advertise. Is that
Well,
correct?
I'm not sure how procurement does it. I think it may go out to some of the firms in our list of contractors that do this type of work, but it's also advertised to the public for everyone to bid on it. So,
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if Lady's on, but it will go to all the, the sort of relevant firms on our vendor list. And so I think I have a note somewhere in my email on that, so I'm searching for it right now, but.
This is Cornelia. Yeah, usually we have a list of
Yeah.
contractors that we work with that we send out. We do send it out. So
And-
there is usually a list to send out to.
Well, part of the reason I ask the question is usually when we get these things, you'll say we send it out to 15 people, we got 3 responses, or we got 12 responses. The question I'm really looking for is, are there many out there who do it? How come we only got 3 responses?
There's a handful of I think it has to do with how busy everybody is right now. I don't think a lot of firms can handle the extra workload currently. That's the only explanation I can think of off the top of my head, because everyone is extremely busy. General contractors, testing firms, is everybody, construction management firms, everyone's extremely busy right now. So.
And is this requirement for testing relatively new in the county?
It started about 2 years ago.
After
3 years
the
ago.
transportation center?
I think it may have started prior to that. I'm not 100% sure when they started. I know we had to do it at Elizabeth House 3 was our first building. We had to hire construction material testing and third-party inspections.
Yeah.
It's part of their new building code. So you have to get approval for the firm you're using and so on and so forth through the count for the Department of Permitting Service. There's a gentleman by the name of Chi Wong who approves the firms before we can contract with them. So.
And Paul, I'm curious how we're going to monitor the contractor's performance as far as the compliance with the minority female disability commitment. Since we're giving them extra points, I want to be sure that we are monitoring that, and I really would hope that we will add the report of the monitoring as we look at and receive updates on the project, so that we are confident that those were appropriately awarded, and we are gaining a confidence in the fact that this compliance is occurring.
Yes, Bozzuto Construction monitors through their payroll and their pay apps is how they track the MBE participation. And with Sika, who's a subcontracting firm, and Kim, they're both 100% minority firms, but we just have to make sure it gets tracked when they send their payroll, their pay ups in. It's how we track the other contractors on site.
Okay.
Okay.
Ask a quick question about that. When I
Yes,
look
sir.
at the scoring criteria that's on slide 4, I guess it says MFD participation above the minimum requirement of 25% of contracts for subcontract work. But I assume the fact that Kim Engineering is an MFD itself, so that it's not just for the subcontract work, it's for the actual contract as well, right?
Yeah, we look at both, and also Sika, the subcontractor, is 100% minority
Right,
firm as well.
right.
So, I mean, we're kind of double covered here with that,
Yeah.
so, which
Great.
is a good thing. So,
I was just a little confused by the
Right.
language there. Made it
Yeah.
sound like it was
Yeah.
just for the subcontract work.
even if it was, we'd still be over 35% because Sika is a 100% certified firm. And we're starting to get a lot more minority firms actually applying to our RFPs and IFPs now. So that's a good sign too. So,
Great.
so.
If there are no further questions, is there a motion to accept the staff recommendation with the understanding that the remarks and will be incorporated in the revised packet to the commission?
So move. I move that we recommend this for approval by the full commission.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Can I just suggest on that point, Jeffrey, that you made on the minority thing? I think staff ought to go back and look at the wording of that last item on slide 4.
Yes, we will.
Because it seems to apply solely to subcontractors and doesn't take into consideration the prime contractor being an MFD firm.
Sure. We will look at it and work with procurement to make adjustments if needed.
All right, good.
Thank you, commissioners.
Greg.
You.
Our next item is
All right.
the Willem Manors property. And Zachary, you're going to turn this over to Marcus, I believe.
Yeah, I think Catherine's going to walk us
Okay.
through the final development plan. So we'll let her step in.
Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Catherine Hollister. I'm a senior financial analyst in the real estate division. Staff is presenting the final development plan for the Willow Manor properties and is requesting the Development and Finance Committee's support of staff's recommendation to the commission on this item. On page 22 is the executive summary for the transaction. As you may know, HOC acquired these properties back in 2018 pursuant to the county's right of first refusal ordinance. The properties have reached the end of their initial 15-year LIHTC compliance period, and staff is preparing for the upcoming resyndication and refinance of the properties. The transaction is currently projected to close in October 2021 with renovation to begin in November 2021. And the commission has approved several actions thus far, including the selection of Nastos Construction as the general contractor and PNC as the LIHTC syndicator. Pages 23 and 24 provide additional background on the properties as well as a location map for the properties. On slide 25 is the transaction rationale. The transaction presents many benefits to HOC and residents. To name a few, the transaction will bring the properties in line with HOC standard of high quality, well-designed, energy efficient, affordable housing, providing residents a much improved living standard. It will also ensure properties are financially sustainable and competitive within the rental marketplace. It will support the agency's mission for preserving and expanding affordable housing. The properties will continue to be subject to the county's voluntary rent guidelines. All 286 units will be income restricted as required by the scattered site LIHTC requirements. and all units will be age restricted. That's on page 20, or I think that's 25. Yep, there we go. The next slide, page 26, showcases our development team. These are the primary members of the development team. Bennett Frank McCarthy, our architect, JDC Construction, our construction manager, and PNC Bank, our LIHTC investor, have long track records working with HOC. Nastos and Market 9 Design are new vendors to HOC, but have extensive experience in multifamily renovations. Nastos specifically has been the GC on a number of LIHTC renovations in the state of Maryland. And our development team is diverse. We have 2 minority-owned businesses and a woman-owned business as part of our primary development team. Page 27, the next page, shows the existing conditions at the properties and the proposed renovation scope.
Catherine, I have just a really small question, but
Sure.
when I look at the bathroom, the typical bathroom, I see you've got 1 grab bar. You don't have one on
No
the
grab bars. It's a
Isn't there
towel
one?
bar.
No, there's one on the new, I think.
It just
In
around,
in the picture, it looks like that's a towel bar, and then
there's a grab bar
No,
right
I'm
around
talking
the,
about in the shower itself.
oh, in the shower. Yeah. Okay.
There's a grab bar to get in, but there's none on that far wall. And usually you have 2 at least.
And I would trust that this is going to include a handheld shower and that the shower is going to be curbless.
Yeah. So so all of the tub and shower surrounds will have the blocking to add in grab bars, and then for all existing showers, we will be converting those to curbless showers. So this picture right here is a tub, and so we aren't converting tubs to showers, but in many of the units, instead of this tub, it'll be the same dimensions, but it has a shower pan that has a small lip on it. So we're going to be taking out those existing shower pans and doing a curbless shower floor at all the existing showers.
And will there be a medicine cabinet that looks just like a mirror only? And bathrooms need medicine cabinets. If it's not provided, I think it should be.
So we do. So the existing bathrooms do have a medicine cabinet. What we are planning to do is to provide a bathroom vanity that has a number of drawers and a number of tall drawers to be able to provide that space for medicine or other items that would typically go in the medicine cabinet. So as part of our renovation scope, we are planning to remove the medicine cabinets, but provide that storage within the vanity, the sink vanity.
is that something you'd like to see?
I would really like to see vanities with the mirror so that the mirror can be adjusted. I just think we're trying to save fractions of pennies on livability and quality of life. And so I would like to see medicine cabinets with doors and mirrors that do extend so that they can be visible by a seated person, and handheld shower heads. And I would dance on my desk if it would support me with excitement on the conversion to the curbless showers. I cannot thank you enough, and I think that safety issue alone is remarkable and a vast improvement for the agency. And as we move along, following the various LEED standards, and we look at the wellness category, anything we can do is going to affect quality of life and ultimately health and wellness. So kudos to the staff for making these improvements, and I look forward to continuing the efforts.
Yeah. Sorry, Commissioner Nelson, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Jackie, what's the norm in terms of senior units and medicine cabinets? Because the one thing I was thinking, I mean, I understand what Catherine had said, but I think about our concerns around here. When you have little kids who might become visitors, you don't want medications
In drawers.
in drawers. And that's the big advantage of having medicine cabinets.
Yeah.
I also know that it's harder for somebody who is seated to get to it, but
Right.
our concern has always been medications and little fingers.
Well, let us do this. Let us take these comments
Okay.
and consider them, and we'll provide a response in the commission packet. But we've heard the comments, and so we'll look at the handheld showers, medicine cabinets / safety from little fingers. I know there was some telescopic mirrors, and I think that was it, or was there a fourth one?
Well, I was concerned
the
about
grab
the
bars.
grab bar on the
Yeah,
wall of the tub.
we have the blocking, right, Catherine?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Well, thank you. As we make these kinds of improvements, I hope that with each successive development, we will incorporate the items that we are incorporating here and continue to move forward on the LEADS V4 program of health and wellness. So this is exciting, ground cutting, ground breaking efforts. And I'm just delighted to see us intensifying our commitment to our residents' health and safety and well-being. So thank you again.
Sure, yes. So pages 28 through 30 show the interior design and the finish selections for the properties.
Could I make just a comment on the theater seating?
Mm-hmm.
Those seats look terribly deep for women and elderly women to get out of. I don't know whether it's just the photography and the angle of the illustration, but I would just highlight that it's more difficult to get out of chairs as people age. And if we can be aware of that and just check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. That image specifically, that's the concept we're going for. Those aren't the actual chairs selections, but it's the idea of individual seating with a hard surface or a place to put, food or drink. So it's more for the concept, but I'll absolutely keep that in mind as we do make the final furniture selections.
And as you are looking at the next slide, I wonder if those are lever door handles that you're showing on the page 30.
Mm-hmm.
If that picture on the bottom line there is door handles, and whether we're universally going to be using lever door handles now. I would recommend it.
The properties currently have those handles. I don't think we have a door handle here. It might be a towel bar that you're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Jackie, you'll like the fact that the shower head is a handheld one, though.
Right.
Yep. We're making progress. Wonderful progress.
Great. Page 31 provides a summary of the hard construction costs for the renovation. In total, the hard costs break down to approximately $49,000 per unit. The majority of the costs, approximately 82%, are related to work being done within the residential units. 13% of the total costs will be spent on common area upgrades, and 4% will be spent on exterior improvements. the chart on the left is the same information as the pie chart. It's just shown in a different way. And then page 33 summarizes the relocation plan for the renovation. The Whalen Manor properties will be building off of the Bower Park tenant relocation and community communications plan. And staff is currently developing best practices to protect the safety and health of residents, staff, and employees during the renovations. Staff has determined that the best strategy is to fully vacate units undergoing renovation by temporarily relocating residents to other on and off-site units. This approach ensures that the workers will be isolated from residents and there will be minimized possible pathways for COVID transmission. On April 1st, 2021, the commission authorized holding 20 units vacant, that's a 7% vacancy, to accommodate the renovation and relocation needs of each phase of the renovation. And as part of the final development plan, staff is requesting to increase that vacancy to 10%, or a total of 29 units. This increased vacancy will allow more residents to be temporarily relocated to another unit at the properties and reduce the need for offsite relocation. Residents with special needs would be given priority for relocation to on-site units during the renovation.
Catherine, on the renovation issue, had we done a follow-up survey of the residents' response to the renovation plan and their relocation and their response? And did you get feedback that is useful in developing this one?
Yeah, we did. We held resident meetings in July, and in advance of those meetings, we sent out surveys to all households, and the response rate has been very high. Most, as part of those surveys, we request if they have any reasonable accommodations that we can accommodate through the renovation. We gauge their preference for where they want to be temporarily relocated to during the renovation. We also ask if they want to go back to their original unit after renovation. And most residents do. Most residents want to return to their current unit, and they would like to stay, at the property if possible. So it's very, very helpful for the renovation and relocation planning.
Terrific. Thank you for assuring that was done.
Yep.
And Catherine, can I ask a question? You are increasing from 20 to 29 the units that are going to be held vacant.
Yeah.
But later on, you say there's no impact on the budget for FY22. I would assume the 22 budget was based on 20 vacancies, not 29.
Well, let me go back and check that out. So I believe the reason why there's no budget impact is because the budget only projected through November 1st. So because we're not closing, I understand that we're going to be building vacancy between now and November 1st. So that could potentially have impact on the budget that was adopted. So I'll go back and just double check that impact, because I don't know off the top of my head if it was just budgeted a 7% vacancy, but I'll confirm that and revise as necessary for the commission packet.
And we can also put we can also bear that spread as a project cost.
In the development budget, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
Yeah.
hold the budget on those.
Relates to a question I had of just whether there had been any sort of cost benefit analysis of increasing the number of vacant units. So.
Yeah, we absolutely did that. The other option, if we don't have enough vacancy at our units, the next option is really looking at an extended stay hotel, which is significantly more costly and has some operational, difficulties to it. The reason why it's more costly is we're paying for a hotel, but we also have to pay to store all of the tenants' belongings. Whereas if we move them to a vacant unit, all of their belongings get moved with them. But if they're moving to an extended stay hotel, their belongings would have to go into storage. So We think that it's typically just better practice if there is vacancy at the properties to use those vacant units first for temporary housing.
And was this change prompted by more units being available, more vacant units being available, or?
COVID.
The increase in vacancy, it really had to do with we're now we're planning to do the renovation floor by floor, and the typical floor is anywhere from 20 to 26 units across these properties. So it's really just trying to accommodate an entire floor of vacant units.
Was that different than when the original proposal was made?
Our original RFP response, we were looking at doing a wing at a time, so it's half a floor at a time. So we did think 20 units was going to be sufficient for that, but part of this, the revised schedule is working one floor at a time, which will, reduce the overall time of the renovation. It also just helps keep, the construction more isolated from residents. So it's also really the desire to try to keep as many residents on site versus using the extended stay hotel.
And do we have 29 vacant units?
Not right now. I think we have about 24 units vacant right now. We'll just work to, as there's turnover, we would just continue, we would hold those units vacant. So we might not have 29 when we start, but somewhere between 24 and 29.
Got it.
And what lessons have we learned from Bower Park that will help us in this? Bower Park, for those, Jeffrey, is a senior development that we are still renovating, I think. And we had a lot of movement of people out of units and on-site and off-site. So what lessons have we learned? Do you know, anybody?
Well, she said the resident survey provided some lessons.
Yeah, and we're also using the tenant relocation and communications plan from Bower Park as the basis for the Willow Manor tenant relocation plan. I know that was developed before the Bower Park renovation began. I don't know if Marcus or Zach can speak to other lessons learned since the renovation began at Bower Park.
As I recall, one of the issues that came up was residents not understanding the reapplication process because of LIHTC resyndication, and that there was a need to communicate additionally information to them early on about the documentations they would need as a result of that. Am I correct, or am I thinking of a different property?
Well, that certainly would have been a new thing for the residents at Bower, because that was not formally a tax credit property. And so sometimes that is something that, we try to convey, that there's actually sort of there's sort of two programs now to qualify through. As these are resyndications, where, there should be some more familiarity with that piece of the program anyway.
Yeah,
I hope our communication with the residents will help them know what they need to have in order in terms of documents in enough advance that they can feel like they're on top of it and pull things together.
And I think I would just add for these, even though the initial 15 years have expired, they're still subject to an extended covenant. And so they would have needed to provide those documentation for certification anyway. So with the resyndication, that should not change.
Right, but they may not know that. The point is the communication to the residents. We understand that, but we need to help them understand it.
Of course, we'll make sure that that they're being advised properly and assistance provided if it's needed.
Okay, great. Thanks.
If
Yeah,
I could-
I would just add to that, you know, as part of our tenant meetings, we always have our compliance department there to answer those specific questions.
Good.
We also have a website specifically for the renovation where we have the PowerPoint from our resident meeting. We have frequently asked questions and other information. As more information about the renovation is finalized, we'll post it to that website. So it's just a resource that our residents can go to at any time if they want to double check a question. And then obviously we're, you know, answering resident questions in real time. They're reaching out to both our real estate team directly and to property management with their questions, and we're answering those as they come in.
Catherine, one strategy might be that if you've got slides that are available for those that are less facile with the computers, it might be useful to provide those slides in hard copy
Mhm.
to all of the residents, because I know that not everybody comes to the meetings, and they may get information from a neighbor who went to the meeting. And so I think whatever we can do to eliminate voids in the information chain, it would be very helpful. There's also the language barrier. So again, if they've got it in writing, they can hang on to it and refer back to it. And if they're being relocated, we want to be sure that they have access, as Fran pointed out, to be able to meet the requirements of the recertification and not have their possessions, particularly if they've moved into a temporary situation and are separated from their possessions, they may not have the paperwork with them, but it may end up in storage, which adds to their confusion and stress. So
And I
anything
think
we
all
can
of
do.
us have come across the fact that getting any official documents, getting copies of any documents these days takes 2 to 3 times as long as it did before the pandemic, and for obvious reasons, but that's just my concern with giving them enough advance notice.
Yep.
This isn't easy, and a lot of elderly people are going to have their kids help them with getting these documents. So if we could just be sensitive to that, it'd be, I think, go a long way.
Right.
If I can just go back to my point on Bower Park, I'm maybe wrongly so, but I'm getting the sense that we're not really comparing notes as much as we should with those projects where we've had similar experiences. And I think the staff needs to ensure that you do communicate with those who were involved in Bower Park or are involved in Bower Park to ensure that you've got everything covered. I mean, you could actually even have a Bower Park resident attend one of the resident meetings here, but that's another story. I just want us to make sure that we benefit from our experiences.
Sure.
And our residents benefit
Right.
particularly. Good.
Great.
I would move approval, sending this forward to the full commission.
Have we finished the? I
I'm
don't think
sorry.
we- Yeah.
Not yet. A few more slides. I'll go quickly, but
Oh, that's all right.
on page 34 is the GC contract and early start agreement. So in April 2021, the commission approved the selection of Nastos Construction as the general contractor for the Willow Manor renovations and authorized the executive director to negotiate a contract. Staff is now requesting approval to execute the contract and is requesting approval to execute a guaranteed maximum price contract with Nastos Construction in an amount not to exceed 16.5 million. Staff is also requesting approval to execute an early start agreement with Nastos not to exceed 1.6 million in order to order materials, lock in subcontractors, and mobilize for the November 2021 start. And staff recommends obligating 1.6 million from the Opportunity Housing Development Fund to pay for this early start work in the event the transaction is delayed or does not close. If the transaction closes in October as planned, These funds won't be needed as this early start work would be paid from construction financing. These funds from the Opportunity Housing Development Fund would only be needed if for any reason the transaction doesn't close or if it's delayed.
Well, given the supply chain delays that are universal in the construction industry right now, I think it would be wise to set this aside as a approved if needed kind of response, but I would like to see how my colleagues feel about it.
Oh, I agree.
Good.
I do have some questions generally, not necessarily specific to this issue about construction costs, and because it's not just delays that are going on. It's prices are going way up, and I am curious. I don't know if we need to have a discussion about the impact of those price increases on our budgets. Whether I know we usually build contingencies into the budgets, whether those contingencies are sufficient, and what impact those price increases may be having on our ability to, maintain the affordability of the units.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing construction costs increase in a number of areas, particularly with our mechanical equipment and appliances. Those are some of the big, and cabinets as well. This number, the 16.5 million, does incorporate our anticipated cost escalation. We just had our GC go out and do an updated pricing exercise to make sure that we are, reflecting the true costs and our anticipated increases in cost during this 2-year renovation. So we believe that we have accounted for all of that, and in addition to that, we have a 10% contingency that we can draw on if necessary.
So that sort of leads me to another question I had, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I was trying to understand some of the different figures that are here. So there's the 16.5 million maximum price, but I was also noticing, so when you'll get to it in a moment, I guess the development plan construction costs are listed at 13.96 million. And then in the use of funds chart, the construction costs are listed at 17.88 million. And so I was trying to understand the difference between those two and where the 16.5 million fits in. And if where the contingent, if that includes a contingency, it would be more than 10% if it's compared to the 13.96, but it's still under the use of funds amount.
Yeah, so the 16.5 million includes the hard construction costs, but also other costs, so overhead, profit, bond premium. So there are other costs, and I can show those more clearly in the commission packet. So
that would be the 13.96 plus those
exactly. Yes, exactly. Okay. And then the construction costs and the uses of funds, that does include the contingency in there. And so that's on top of that 16.5 GMP amount. And there also may be some, I can double check if there's insurance costs that are also included in that construction cost in the uses of funds, but I can make that more clear in the commission packet as to what's included in the GMP contract beyond just the hard costs on the previous slide.
Okay, and so our maximum price doesn't have to include the contingency amounts that get us to the 17.88?
Yep, correct.
Okay. And then sort of relatedly, you know, on construction costs and materials in particular, you know, so we're talking about early start here. Is the early start that's referred to here the same as in some of the other packets that we'll get to, the same as the early release agreement, or is that different? And are those ways of controlling some of the materials costs?
I'm not, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, but
Yeah.
they're the same. So it's essentially a cost mitigation measure to get ahead while pricing is still where it's at. So, but we'll be sure to have that, make sure that the language is
Consistent.
the same, consistent across the packets. So.
Okay, yeah, no, that'd be helpful, and just and then yeah, no, that will eliminate some questions later on, but you know, making sure that this is a way that we are sort of hedging, I guess, a little bit against the possibility of some of those construction cost increases. That's the purpose here.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, and also, you know, to get ahead of the delays that currently exist in the marketplace with ordering and having materials delivered. So it's twofold benefit.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. On page 35 are the sources and uses for the transaction. And I'll just go through the sources first. So the property's NOI is projected to support a mortgage loan up to 47.2 million or 165,000 per unit. Our debt sizing does include a pretty healthy interest rate cushion of 50 basis points or 0.5%. If interest rates were to stay the same as they are today, the properties could support a senior loan of up to 50.9 million. We do have additional taxable bonds in the amount of 2.23 million that will be issued to fund bond reserves. We are anticipating 29.6 million in LIHTC equity. The equity pricing is 88.25 cents on the dollar. The properties are anticipated to repay approximately 6.6 million of the outstanding county HIF loans currently at the properties. The remaining amount of the county HIF, about 13.2 million, will be refinanced and resubordinated in the new transaction, the new owner to the new owner. The underwriting scenario also assumes that all of the seller proceeds will be provided as a source to the transaction in the form of a seller note. And while the sources for the transaction are projected to cover all uses and all project costs, due to the timing of the LIHTC equity installments, there is a need for bridge financing in the amount of $24.1 million, which will fund the renovation and be repaid when the second, third, fourth, and fifth equity installments are paid in. And staff is recommending using the PNC line of credit, the real estate line of credit, as the source for this bridge financing.
Just one correction. It's 21.4 million.
Oh, did I misspeak there?
Just flip the 4 and 1. No biggie.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. And then a final note, I did just want to highlight that we are not anticipating using any existing reserves or property cash as a source for this transaction. And that is due to some interfund payables due to HOC's general fund, and then also an additional 119,000 in cash flow that is included in the FY22 budget that we expect is getting paid out from existing cash and reserves. So that would leave approximately $380,000 in existing cash and cash reserves that would be released to HOC's general fund at closing. And then on page 36 is the operating pro forma. The transaction is underwritten at a 7% vacancy rate. Prior to COVID, the properties maintained an average 5% vacancy. The underwriting also assumes that there will be some savings due to the renovation and resyndication, primarily a reduction in utility costs. However, there are some areas where we're seeing an increase in expenses, most notably the property insurance, as these properties won't be on the county self-insurance fund after closing. Replacement reserves will be funded at $1,200 per unit at closing. And then once stabilized, we are projecting a $350 per unit per year contribution to replacement reserves. The properties will continue to receive a 100% pilot. And then we're assuming rent and expense growth rates trending at 2% and 3% respectively. The properties have been subject to the county voluntary rent guidelines since they were first constructed back in 2004, 2005. When HOC acquired the properties in 2018, the properties have continued to be subject to it, and they will continue to be subject to those county rent guidelines moving forward. So the table below are just asking rents for vacant units. Rents on existing residents would only increase per the voluntary rent guidelines. And then when units are turned over, the table below shows what those proposed asking rents are for the vacant units and the difference between the asking rent today versus after closing.
Quick question there on the 80% AMI target units. I see that staff proposes pricing those at 70%, but the price increase would suggest to me that they're currently priced even lower than 70% right now. Is that the case, or why is there such a large jump for those units compared to all the others?
Yeah, so those 80% units on the chart, they're currently unrestricted, so they're not. So that figure, that 1720 figure for existing rents for those units, that is market for those units right now. We had a market study and an appraisal conducted for these properties in their as renovated condition. So basically a study to see what the rents would be on these units post renovation. And the market, if those units were unrestricted, the market study suggested that rents would be around $2,200 to $2,300, just because of the improvements made to the property and to the units, which is actually in line with what the rents are for 80% AMI LIHTC units. However, that was such a large increase. We felt that it was more appropriate to initially propose rents at the 70% AMI maximum LIHTC rents. So it's a discount to what market rents are and to what the 80% AMI LIHTC rents are, but it is an increase over what the unrestricted rent is for those units today.
Thank you.
Page 37 just summarizes the ownership structure. The commission has already approved the creation of the new owner entity and the new GP entity. One of the requests of the final development plan is approval to execute a limited partnership agreement with our LIHTC investor and to admit them in as a limited partner and special limited partner into the owner entity. Page 38 summarizes.
Kathy, I'm sorry, let me go back to that. On the structure, the special limited partner is a new thing. I mean, I haven't seen those before, have I, in LIHTC projects?
Yeah, I don't know if others have had a similar structure. It is just another way to make sure that the investor is not in sort of a managing role at all. It's just another I guess, like point of separation, just to make sure that they, really are a passive investor in the transaction. So it is a structure that I'm not sure if we've seen this before in other deals, but it's practically the same as most of our other structures.
Commissioner Nelson, this is a Hyun-Suk Choi.
Yeah.
The PNC Bank, usually they creating that the special limited partnership 0.01. So we actually did for that Green Hill, which is the PNC's investors, and also others entity. Usually they create that the special entity for the purpose of that separation of the limited partnership.
Okay, thank you, Hyun-Suk.
Okay, so page 38 summarizes the issues for consideration. There's a long list here that I'm happy to run through if you would like. The first is approval of a final development plan for the renovation of the Willow Manor properties. The second is approval to authorize staff to negotiate with Montgomery County DHCA to consolidate, refinance, and resubordinate the properties to pre-existing HIP loans, and for the new property owner to accept the loan. The third is authorize the acting executive director to sign a purchase and sale agreement between the properties and the new property owner and complete the purchase and sale of the property. The fourth is authorize the properties to provide all of its sale proceeds as a source to the transaction in the form of a subordinate seller note, and authorization for the new property owner to accept the seller note. The fifth is authorize the acting executive director to enter into a limited partnership agreement with PNC and permission to emit PNC or PNC affiliates as the tax credit investor as a non-managing limited partner and special limited partner members of the new property owner. The sixth is authorize new property owner to draw up to $22 million on HOC's real estate line of credit as a source for the bridge financing for the renovation. Approval to release the property's existing available property cash and cash equivalents in an anticipated amount of $380,000 to HOC's general fund at closing. Approval to release the property's existing debt service reserves in the approximate amount of $1.2 million to HOC's FHA risk share MIP cash reserves at closing. Authorize the closing of the LIHTC transaction. Authorize the acting executive director to execute a guaranteed maximum price contract with Nastos Construction in an amount not to exceed $16.5 million. Authorize the acting executive director to negotiate and execute an early start agreement with Nastos Construction for an amount not to exceed $1.6 million, and approve the use of the Opportunity Housing Development Fund as a source for the early start agreement in the event the closing is delayed or does not occur. And finally, approval to hold up to 29 vacant units, which is a 10% vacancy, an increase of 9 units over the prior approval to facilitate renovation phasing and temporary relocation for residents at the properties.
Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Very much. Now let's look at our next item, approval of the financing plan, feasibility, and public purpose for the Willow Manors properties.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Jennifer Arrington, the Acting Director of Mortgage Finance, and we're presenting to you the approval of the financing plan, feasibility, and public purpose for Willow Manor properties, requesting authorization to issue loans to HOC at Willow Manor LLC for acquisition and construction financing, authorization to issue a commitment for permanent financing, and authorization for the borrower to accept loans in accordance with the finance plan. And Victoria Dixon will be presenting this packet today.
Thank you.
So Willow Manor, as discussed, is a 3 scattered sites totaling 286 units. The property has applied for the allocation of 4% tax credits, and the proposed financing plan totals approximately $101 million in costs to acquire, renovate, and finance the property. Closing of the transaction is expected to occur by October 21st. Utilizing income averaging, 100% of units will be restricted for households with incomes averaging at or below 60% of AMI. That includes 57 units, or approximately 20% at 40% of AMI, 7% at 50% of AMI, 66% at 60% of AMI, and 7% at 80% of AMI. The subject meets the needs of the community to preserve affordable senior housing in furtherance of HOC's mission and supports the allocation of available volume cap. In order to execute the development plan as presented, staff proposes the following financing plan. Issuance of tax exempt or combination of both tax exempt and taxable private activity bonds, adding up to $55 million, which will fund an FHA risk share mortgage loan and bond reserve under the 1996 indenture. An allocation of HOC's tax exempt volume cap of up to $48 million is requested to satisfy the LIHTC 50% test. References to the recycling of additional volume cap from CDA will be removed. We also note the inclusion of LIHTC equity, the bridge loan to be provided by HOC funded from proceeds of the real estate line of credit, the subordinate county loan, and subordinate settlement note. If you scroll three more slides to 47. Closing is expected to occur in October 2021, stabilization to occur by February 23, and conversion to permanent debt to occur by the outside date of July 2024. If you would slowly page through the next few slides and pause at the transaction highlights, number 51. This slide gives a brief outline of the transaction highlights. We have the public purpose, the county's interest that will remain in the deal, the volume cap allocation, which reference to the CDA will be removed, and sundry. If you would continue, please, to the stabilized pro forma. As noted, 29 vacant units will be held to facilitate renovations. Post-renovation stabilized operations are expected to be achieved by February 2023 and assumes an NOI of approximately $2.6 million. As discussed, rent increases for existing tenants will be subject to the county's voluntary rent guidelines, and underwriting assumes achieving a 15% reduction to utility expenses and continued real estate tax exemption. The stabilized contribution to replacement reserves of $350 per unit is subject to confirmation by the engineer. An underwriting the initial deposit of $1,200 per unit will be made at closing. Based on the all-in interest rate of 3.65%, which is inclusive of a 50% cushion for interest rate movements, the property is projected to support a loan of up to $47.2 million, which could increase if interest rates are favorable at the time of closing. Current interest rates, excluding the cushion, would achieve a mortgage amount of approximately $50.9 million. On the next slide, the financing plan as outlined. The transaction is expected to generate approximately $29 million in tax credit equity and require approximately $45.4 million of tax exempt financing to meet the 50% test. Therefore, staff is requesting an allocation of up to $48 million in volume cap for the transaction to satisfy the 50% test. In addition, taxable bonds will be used to fund up to the full $55 million for the mortgage loan and the indenture bond reserve. The mortgage will be insured by FHA risk share, for which HOC would assume 25% of the risk. And staff asked the committee for approval to obtain a waiver from FHA for the issuance of bonds with a 25-year balloon payment, if necessary, to adjust for interest rate conditions and to maintain the economics of the transaction at the time of closing. Provided on this, the next slide is an outline of challenges and solutions for the agency volume cap and the transaction. As we know, volume cap is a limited commodity. To solve for this, HOC has requested additional volume cap during the third quarter of fiscal year 2021 and recommends a taxable issuance for proceeds needed beyond the 50% test for this transaction. Staff considered but no longer recommends recycling with CDA for this transaction, as the pricing impact between tax exempt and taxable is small. On the next slide.
Excuse me, Victoria, but before we leave the volume cap explanation, will the county's population growth do anything to improve HOC's volume cap resources? Is there a relationship between population
Yes.
and volume cap?
Yes, Commissioner Simon, the formula that's used to calculate the allocation to localities is based on population growth. And over the last several years, there has been a gradual increase in the amount of volume cap reflective of the growth in the population. So we're expecting that as that continues, the amount will increase.
Okay, thank you very much. I needed that base information there. Go ahead, Victoria. Thank you.
So here you can see the volume cap chart demonstrating that HOC has sufficient volume cap to meet the 50% test for the subject transaction, with the special allocation of additional cap in the amount of $63.7 million that was awarded from DHCD in April 2021. On the next slide is the bond cap matrix. Based on current underwriting and scope of work, the subject transaction scores an 88% on the bond cap matrix, supporting the allocation. And on the next slide, you can see an outline of the scoring criteria, where it scored a qualitative 35 out of 36 points due to the public purpose, readiness to proceed, and stage delivery. And on the next slide, with regards to the quantitative elements, it scored 7 out of 12 due to the significant interest rate savings versus using a comparable market execution, which impacts the comparison of the amount saved versus the amount of volume cap allocation and the margin of proposed rents below market. Our comparable Fannie Mae loan with 30-year term and 80% loan to value was used for this comparison. On the next slide is an outline of the bond authorizing resolution, which will be prepared by bond counsel. And we will have that ready for review. And on the next slide are the issues for consideration. As noted before, we do not believe that there will be adverse impact for the agency's fiscal year 2022 budget. This is demonstrated at least on the fee income side. And we will confirm on the operational side. And then on the next slide are the outline of the commission requests that we request the committee to recommend. Approval of the financing plan as presented, approval of the feasibility and public purpose and the allocation of up to 48 million in volume cap for the transaction, approval of the bond authorizing resolution for issuance and delivery of tax exempt or combination with taxable bonds in an amount of up to 55 million under the 1996 indenture. Authorization to issue a financing commitment for the mortgage loan as credit enhanced via FHA risk share mortgage insurance, for which HOC will assume 25% of the risk. A bullet to request the approval to obtain a waiver from FHA for the issuance of bonds with a 25-year balloon payment will be added. And finally, approval for the borrower to accept the proposed mortgage loan. Are there any questions?
I have some questions. If we could go up to the I guess the volume cap portion and maybe look at the bond cap matrix. I mean,
two more before this one.
56.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, right now, well, actually, let's go up to the previous one right above, I think. Yeah. So we have about a $1.5 million gap between our available and what we project for the rest of the year. And so are we likely to, it sounded like, I think you mentioned we've put in a request for additional volume cap. Are we confident that we will get that?
Yes, we've had initial conversations with our counterparts at the state. And when we come back with the remaining 2 transactions, we'll make the adjustments there. But we believe that they will likely advance some volume cap that's needed from our next year's allocation. You may recall that, and from this discussion, that there was a special allocation this year of 63.7 million, which was pretty significant. But we believe that they will grant our request for a small advance on next year's volume cap. So they'll give it to us this year and reduce the amount available to us in the calendar year 22, which should allow us to close these transactions as proposed.
Okay.
But I assume on that we'll start negotiating to get an increased cap in 23.
Yes, based on the work that's been done over the last year and a half, we expect that our needs will be met beyond our regular application.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring, and I guess solves the immediate problem if we feel confident that we'll get that. I mean, going down now to the bond cap matrix, you know, I struggle a little bit to understand how this is supposed to be used. For example, you know, Georgian Courts and Shady Grove aren't on here. So like if it, you know, I guess personally, I don't find it necessarily, it's nice to see how this compares against past projects, but if the intent is to use it to understand how we would make decisions when they're, you know, among competing priorities for a limited resource. So if we weren't going to get that 1.5 million, you know, how would we be making a decision about, you know, where that's going to come out of, you know, and so, you know, without being able to see how this project compares against Georgian Courts and Shady Grove, you know, it feels limited to me. And so I'm not sure what the purpose of this is.
So if we had, for example, a private developer transaction that needed to be funded, that's when it really matters. For the commission's transactions, we knew earlier on that there isn't really a competition among the properties, that they all needed an allocation of volume cap. And so the reason for us to have gone to the extent we did to obtain the necessary volume cap. I do understand your point, however, but I think in situations where the commission has to choose, that's when this chart really matters. And you know, as you can see from here, most of the projects have been ours, and we've just figured out how to get them financed. In the case of Willow Manor, Georgian Court, Shady Grove, there's really no choice by the commission other than to for staff to and the commission to obtain the necessary volume cap, because they all need this resource for the transactions to work. But I do understand the point you're making about comparison and choice among the various projects, and perhaps we'll find a different way to present this data or not. But this also shows you what we've done in the past and helps for comparison about why one project scores 88 and another scores, you know, 90-odd%. And perhaps the descriptive should be not that the commission gets to choose among which projects gets allocated, but perhaps a description of what this information really means. And so we'll look at that if it will be helpful to you.
Yeah, I think so. But what I'm hearing you say also is that if there were a private developer coming in and requesting bond cap volume from us, and that's something that we do.
Yes, it is something that we do, and staff would present the 2 transactions or 3 or whatever to the commission, because you would then have to make the decision: is private developer project more important or more critical for various HOC and county reasons, and could the HOC transaction be financed differently. And so we would bring that discussion if it came down to, do we allocate to private developer project A or HOC's transactions?
Okay, okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the staff recommendations with this added information? To move this forward to the full commission?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Recommendations are unanimous, and thank you for all of the work that's gone into putting this together.
Before we get to the next one, can I just ask a couple of general questions? One, Kayleen, have we done anything in terms of reviewing our experience under risk share? And I ask that particularly wondering whether or not the 25% risk is something that we could or should be considering changing. I don't know.
So we routinely review all of our outstanding loans on the risk share program. And from time to time, and depending on the type of financing, the 25% may be different. So as an example, when we did the FFB loans, there was a requirement for 50%. We had no choice. There may be instances where we may propose that HOC takes 90% of the risk, depending on the transaction. And we've done it before, and how the commission, how staff feels about a particular transaction and how FHA may feel about a transaction. But the 25% has been used in the last several years because we wanted to push more of the risk to FHA rather than build up our fee or reserve balance. And we thought that that was the appropriate risk amount to take. And if we were to reduce the amount to say 10%, it would subject the transaction to FHA's own underwriting. And that could, make the process a whole lot longer. This gives us the control so that we can move through our process timely and efficiently. We think it's the appropriate amount of risk, given all the facts. And so we can certainly look at transactions going forward. And the real benefit to us would be that HOC would collect a larger amount of the premium. And from my perspective, and I think staff would agree, we'd rather push more of the risk to HOC than take more of the fee, because it's more advantageous to us to do that, unless the commission feels differently.
Okay. Well, thank you. The other question I had was, the county insurance fund doesn't cover LIHTC properties?
It does.
Well,
property insurance, yeah. PNC has a special requirement. They want to be named as an insured,
that's
and the county won't allow it. So,
yes,
yeah.
I remember that. Okay.
I think we're going to be looking to increased insurance costs forever from across the board after the situation in Florida in any event. But I'll be interested in the staff monitoring that impact on us and our budgets as we move forward. Let's move next to the Upton 2 approval for the executive director to execute a change order to continue CFI construction.
This isn't the right packet. Whoever's driving. Yes.
Page 62.
Yes.
There you go.
I'll just jump in. Good morning, commissioners. This is Jay Shepard, Housing Acquisition Manager. And this is item number 4. The Upton 2 does start on page 62. And so this is approval for our acting executive director to execute a change order with CFI Construction of Rockville to continue construction management services at the Upton 2 development. This is ultimately a deliberation item, and then this will come before the with your recommendation to the committee, to the commission in September. HOC has established a construction management pool that was set up to assist and really augment HOC staff in our performance of providing renovation and new construction projects. At the HOC at the Upton 2, construction began in April of 2019, and at which time firms in our pool were solicited, and the firm that had the most responsive and responsible bid was CFI Construction of Rockville, and they were selected and got started. The construction has proceeded as planned. Delivery is expected to occur now, though, by floors, where the first floor of 12 units are going to be delivered in October of this year, and each subsequent floor, and there's 6 of them, of 23 units each, will be delivered by week. And so the ownership inspections that are required to ensure that all these units are timely delivered is placing a strain on our in-house construction staff, which is currently at 3 full-time employees. Further, at the end of the year, our low-income housing tax credits are predicated on 90 lease signings, taking occupancy by the end of the year to qualify for a 2021 delivery, which means that the delivery process must have our proper resources in place to handle the workflow that's coming. Also, the impact of COVID-19 and the rise of the Delta variant may require more resources be available if in the event some workers become ill. With expected delivery this year and after 34 months of construction, with CFI closely at the helm here with us, we felt they were uniquely qualified to continue moving forward with us at a very efficient cost, which I'll point out here in a second. The aggregate contract for CFI right now is $249,000, and that was under its pool contract limit of $250,000. So anything in excess of $250,000 does require commission approval per our procurement policy of 2017. And CFI has estimated the cost for the additional responsibilities required for our timely LIHTC unit delivery to be approximately $140,000. CFI will be expected to manage approximately 75% of the unit owner inspections on behalf of HOC, as they've done in the past for us at the RAD 6 and also at our COLA towers. To safeguard against the possibility of overruns, we're requesting the commission approve an amount up to $150,000. That includes a $10,000 or a 7% contingency for any variations in contracting or for any unforeseen issues that could arise before our project's completed, so we wouldn't have to return back to the commission. If approved, the change order would bring their total eligible contract to $399,000, and that equates to $11,735 per month cost for construction management services, which is very competitive in the marketplace. And in the packet, I detail 2 recent examples of projects where those costs are illustrated. We always look at the development budget, when we're looking at these potential requests, and in the memo here we outline a segment of the overall master budget, and this would not affect sources. And it's ultimately a budget reallocation within the budget to take money from one line item and put it towards this line item. And in this case, we have we probably would have 2 multiple items. One, which was a construction manager for a lender cost that wasn't being incurred. We had it broken out separate from other CM costs for the lender, and also we had soft cost contingency. So we just look at areas in the budget that have places that we've not spent the funds, and we look to reallocate them. It doesn't change the sources in the budget. And that's the illustration there in the table. And so ultimately, will the Development and Finance Committee join our staff recommendation and also the recommendation of the Finance Committee to approve this change order for CFI for an amount up to and not exceeding 150,000, and that allows a continuance of their construction management services for work at the Upton 2, and it also you authorize the executive director to execute that said change order for the amount. That's also an express request. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Are there questions? If not, I'd just like to comment that the commission has over the years been concerned about times when workload would pile up and put a stress on existing staff. And I am pleased to see you coming to us with the request simply because I feel that it's more cost effective to do it when it's needed than to carry a payroll continuously. So certainly I am very enthusiastic about this and supportive. Are there any other comments before I call for the question? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve this request of staff?
I move approval of the recommendation to send this forward to the full commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much. I
Thank
think this
you.
is an
Thanks.
appropriate use of the commission invitation to come to us when you're reaching a backlog or a challenge on staff resources. Our next
Thank you.
item is the Georgian Court apartments for approval of final development plan and budget. Zach, are you taking the lead on this?
Oh, sorry, Karen, go ahead.
Hansuk Choi, Housing Acquisition Manager, will discuss
Okay.
this and the next item.
Good morning. Thank you, Kerry. For the record, my name is Hyun-Seok Choi. I'm the Housing Acquisition Manager on the Real Estate Development team. Staff is recommend to the Commission Development Finance Committee for approval of a final development plan for Georgian Court. Page number 67 and the 68 is the exact summary. Georgian Court was originally constructed in 1976 with 147 unit. Compliance periods end in 2015 is a currently extended use period, which will be expired December 31st in the 2030. Georgian Court has 11 building, but also there is the staff is currently expecting renovating that 2 building each phase. So there's going to be 6 phase. And then also commission already approved for that up to stop at least 24 vacant unit so that we can providing to the general contractor so that they can able to do the renovation. The commission selected selected by Hammer Builder as the general contractors. And also commission selected the Boston Financial as the investors. Staff already submit low-income housing tax credit application state, and the staff is expecting receiving building permit next month. Next page. So currently there's a property has that the HOC loan and then existing HOC loan and the county loan. And then staff is planning to paying off at the closing both the HOC loan, the HOC bond loan and the county loan. We like to starting early as possible for the renovation. So once we closing November 29 this year, we like to starting the general contractor starting December 1st for that each phase, which is roughly take 70 to 90 days. But usually that first phase is to take longer because they have to knowing that the building. So, and also Georgian Court doesn't have any UFAS unit or vision and hearing unit. We are creating that 8 UFAS unit, and then 3 unit is compliant with that the vision and hearing unit.
Hunsick,
Sure.
on that issue, are you saying that 5 will be accessible physically and that 3 will be modified only to the extent of hearing and visual impairment? Because those modifications are much less costly than the structural accessibility. And if we're going to be adding accessibility, I would love to see the emphasis on structural with the ability to modify hearing and vision as required or requested by residents. And so I want to know whether all 8 are going to be physically accessible or just 5 of them that you're planning to make physically accessible.
So the Commissioner Simon, so actually there's an 8 UFAS unit. 5 is the 2-bedroom unit, and then 3 is the 1-bedroom unit. So there is a total UFAS unit is 8. But this is a garden style, so we cannot able to make it UFAS unit in the 2nd floor or 3rd floor. So
That's right.
only limit for that the 1st floor. But if you go to the page, if I want to go a little bit further, then can you show that page 76? So here's a kind of a layout where they're locating that the UFAS unit and then also the vision and hearing unit.
Okay.
So to the right side and the left side, the building has a lot of different elevation. So, but we are the design team and then Georgian Core team, we like to put it in the close to that the management office or community space, and also close to the parking lot because of if there is a lot of a slope, then parking lot
Yes.
has to be make it stable. So the handicap parking space, that's what we found that behind that building. That area, that's what we put it in the handicap parking space, and then also close to that the management office. If we put it into the left side of the building, somebody has to be climbed to all the way to up
Yep.
to that management office if they have some issue. But obviously, we are creating that accessible route going there, but more benefit to that area. So there is a full building is we could able to put it in the UFAS unit if that resident is required. So that's what we did actually sending out to resident survey. If it's necessary to have ADA accessible, then we will comply.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that 3 wasn't part of the 8. And thank you for that clarification. I misread that.
Yeah, so
for some reason.
Yeah, 3 is a separate for the vision and hearing for that.
In addition.
Yeah, that's
okay. And we could make any other, were an occupant develop the need, we could be adding hearing or vision modifications much more economically and easily than to renovate another unit for accessibility.
That is correct. So every unit has a blocking in the bathroom. If you're required to graph and other stuff, we'll incorporate with that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so can you go to page number 70? So Georgian Court is located in the qualified census tract, which is a QCT, which is a qualified for that 30 base boost under low-income housing tax credit, which is allowed to give us the additional low-income housing tax credit, so which is a help for the project. Next page. So here's a scope of work. So very similar to Georgian Court and the Shady Grove. But as you can see that there's an existing kitchen, and then below that there is a proposing rendering as a new finish, new cabinet, new appliance, new light fixture. Also, we are a little bit opening for that, creating that the breakfast bar area, the countertop, so that they can enjoy it in the morning. But not just only just finished for that the kitchen. Also, we're doing the floor painting. Also, we are upgrading that high efficient HVAC system, and then a new light fixture. Also, replacing that domestic the water piping, including that new valve. Because of a built in 1976, so as of approximately like more than close to the 50 years from the when we originally built. So I think this is a time to replacing that the domestic water piping. And also we are removing asbestos containing material, so that make sure there's no any contaminating materials in the property. Next page. So this is a more close to looking at it. So this is actually a one bedroom unit kitchen layout. So we also creating that breakfast bar area, new wood cabinet, countertop, tile backflash, and new lighting, and the new appliance, all stuff. So next page. So one bedroom unit, I want to highlight that a little bit more close to the detail. So the current one bedroom unit, exactly the same size of a two bedroom unit. You can actually see that two bedroom unit is bathroom is really small. So the design team and then staff as they come up, that idea was instead of going through that the hallway before that the bathroom into that accessing to that bedroom door, we just open up the new door, the bedroom door, so that much easier for the furniture when they're moving in and out, so that the more convenience for that the resident. And also we are creating that the open kitchen concept, but we're not, it's not like a shaded room has a really wide open, but it's a limited open space. But that's what we can able to creating that kitchen.
Someone needs to mute their background noise.
And then next page.
Like a child crying out for its mother when the lights are turned out.
So here's the existing building. So the currently we are planning is we are like to put it, we are put it in the canopy with a light fixture. So it's the snow and the rain, make sure that the stairs wall is not freeze or wet. Next page.
I'm delighted to see the covered entry, by the way.
The enclosure with the doors.
Yes, and the revised handrails.
Got it. Obviously, there's a cost that affected, but we already submit the building permit. I will do the next project similar to this kind of stuff. So there is a current existing mailbox which is not compliant with that the U.S. Postal Service requirement. So the design team come up. The idea was below that the staircase below that that's a currently empty space. We could make it enclosure and then put it in the lighting with that, including the parcel lockers, so that is meet that U.S. Postal Service regulation. Next page.
Great.
So as I mentioned before, this is a kind of a layout where they're locating that the UFAS unit and visual and hearing unit, and where they're locating the playground area, so that everybody is able to access for that common space. Next page.
And the accessible routing is wonderful.
Oh, okay, thank you. So here's the renovation phase. So as I mentioned before, there's a 6 phase with a 12 building, but the 2 cluster has a 3 building. So obviously we cannot be able to do that one time for 3 building because of a limitation of the vacancy. So there's a basically that we like to starting first for the UFAS unit first, so which means phase 1, phase 2, each building has a UFAS unit, and then leasing all the maintenance shop is basically that the 3rd phase, and then others, 1 cluster has a 3 building, has to be 1 first, and then after that is the starting phase 4. Next phase. So here's that the general contractor cost for each division. Subtotal is $11.7 million. And general requirement overhead, the profit, insurance, and bonding, and the cost certification is 1.7. So adding up to $13.5 million, that is the general contractor's contract amount. And there's others, HOC construction contingency, which is a 10% of contractor cost, and then playground the cost, HOC build risk, and then FF&E, and then total other hard costs is roughly $1.6 million. As you can see, the pie chart is the mechanical, the finish, and the electronical is the major cost of that, the general contractors. Next page. Very similar to that, the Georgian Court and the Shady Grove, because of a 12 building, 6 phase, we're expecting closing the same time. So building permit is sitting September, we expecting closing November, general contractor starting first phase in December. Approximately 21 months to complete the renovation, which is a 2013 third quarter. Third quarter will be completed, and then we will convert in 2024. Next page. This is early start material. What is we are currently doing early start material? Because once we are given them notice to proceed with the general contractor, less than November 29. And then that time, general contractor is going out to their subcontractor, entering their contract. But also the subcontractor providing submittal shop drawing, architect reviewing their shop drawing, the submittal. After that, they have to reorder. If you do that, that's almost like end of December or January, they're gonna order the material. And then when they're actually able to starting, basically at the end of January, the general contractor actually go out to that unit doing demolition or other work. So in order to reducing that period of time, also we'd like to price lock it for their subcontract, meaning is that we are giving them allowed to panel builders to entering their subcontractors or suppliers so that they can provide us a submittal shop drawing, and our architect consultant reviewing that, so then they can order early. When we closing, we are expecting receiving delivery the material and then cabinet and other stuff for only phase 1. But also there is a cost involved for that, the general contractors, which is a $70,000. But that is not HOC additional cost for that. This is a part of their contract amount. But this one is if we cannot be able to closing this year, because that's the material we have to be paid for that. Obviously, the general contractors, we have to pay for their work. But I slightly made a mistake for that, each line item, but the subtotal amount is $871,330,000. That is correct numbers. And the total release amount is that is the correct number. But when I prepare for that, the final commission package, I will correct that. Next page. So I think this is a kind of a good, important to discussion for that Development Finance Committee. So Georgian Court neighborhood has a really 6 competitors that the Belt Road, less than a mile radius. So there is a 6 property, and currently in average 1-bedroom unit or 2-bedroom unit for that the 6 property is basically that 1453, and then 1708 is a 2-bedroom unit. But currently Georgian Court is $835, and 2-bedroom unit is $1,045, which means 1-bedroom unit basically less than $618, which is a roughly 42.5% below than the competitors. And 2-bedroom unit is $662 lower than the competitor, which means the 38.8% is basically below than the market. But also our rent is including water and sewers. Only one competitor has that built in their rent, but others 5, the property doesn't including that the water and sewer. But also Georgian Court has an over-income resident, 21 over-income resident as of August the 1st. Can you go to the next page?
Excuse me, but before you leave that slide, I noticed that all of these competitors, as well as our own property, were built during the oil embargoes and have solely electric, heat, and air conditioning. Is there solar possibilities on this site?
Uh, my previous that the team was engaged with the ground wall, the consultant, but I think it doesn't work because there were so many trees involved. So I think that's my understanding, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's correct. We did engage a solar consultant early on, and there are some fairly large mature trees that provide a lot of shade, so it does make it difficult. Additionally, this property and Shady Grove are not master metered, so it does present some challenges on how to do it. But once they are operating, we can always see if technology has changed and if there's any other way to investigate it. But it was something early in the process that we looked at.
Because that would help the affordability even more, I would assume.
Yeah, potentially with the Paddington, we can research and see if there is an opportunity for another community solar
Great.
type project.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I was going to wait till the end to say this because I'm not a member of the committee and I didn't want to interrupt your work, but I would like to see us investigating these options for community solar with each renovation and new property. I know it doesn't always work, but parking lots, roofs, some of these things, particularly in newer projects, may be able to work, and it'd be great to have that be kind of a standard check that we do to see whether or not we can incorporate that and have it benefit our residents and or HOC if it's central metering on some of these. So that's a request that the group continue that, but it sounds like, Marcus, that you're already on it, which is great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We look forward to hearing about more opportunities working out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would support all that, and I would just also add though that trees are good.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
all that shade also contributes to lower cooling costs.
Right.
But we are doing renovating that efficient system. So actually their resident actually able to savings their utility bill. So I just want to point out to you.
Thank you, Hansak.
Yep, thank you. Next page. So so basically that the project rent, so there is the existing resident 75, which means there's a 29 unit HAP contract. And then there is the 21 over income resident. And there is the vacant unit, plus that we have a 7 tenant-based voucher resident. So, and then also this year coming out to turnover. So roughly 75 resident, existing resident staff is proposing to increasing 5% when they moving into newly renovating unit, which is a cost of roughly $42 for 1-bedroom unit, and 2-bedroom unit is the $52. After that, when they renew that next year, we expect an increasing 5%, which is $44, which is adding 1 year plus 2 years is less than $100. And then 2-bedroom unit, we adding additional 5% increase when they renew that the second year, which is a $55, which are adding first year and the second year, basically that the $107 for that increase. However, we are not trying to, staff is not trying to maximize the rent for that, meet that the 6% AMI rent, which is 1-bedroom unit is $1,451 and 2-bedroom unit is a $1,741. But as you can see that the previous page, the neighborhood is actually close to a maximum 6% AMI rent, but we still way below than the competitors or the maximum tax credit rent. So there is, as I mentioned before, there's a 21 resident is over income, somebody making really good money, but that is why, but the first year we are expecting increasing 10%, which means $84 for 1-bedroom unit and 2-bedroom unit, basically $105. But after that, if they're gonna renew, we are increasing the 5% as the others, which is a $46 1-bedroom unit and then $57 for 2-bedroom unit. Even though the 10% increase, 1-bedroom unit is $964, and then 2-bedroom unit is $1,207, which is still way below than the maximum tax credit rent.
And can I just ask for those residents that are over income and that are facing this this potential rent increase. Is that still, would that still be lower than 30% of their total household income?
Yes, that is correct. So we have it at the 21 resident income. So multiply 30% and divide by 12. So some resident actually over than $3,000 for rent burden, but they're currently paying obviously lower. So everybody is over than so less than 30% rent burden.
Amazing.
So the county has it at the voluntary rent guideline. Every year they are issuing based on the previous the rental component of the consumer price index for the metropolitan, the Washington metropolitan area. So BLG historically 1.5 to 4%. I seen that the lowest one I got when I searching that the history was 98 was a 0.6. After that, I saw that the more than 5% they increase after 2000 and other stuff. But step basically not just only increasing 5%, but we are basically increase based on BRG. So if next year BRG was at 3%, but we're not increasing up 3.5, we are increase just 2%, but basically that the 5% is a cap for that the existing resident. But over income resident, basically we are increasing 10% is basically the cap. So I just want to clarify that. So
and sorry, I think I actually meant to ask whether the rent increase, even for those who are not over income, at 5%, which is higher than the VRG, with all residents would still be below 30% of their household income there.
That is correct. As you can see, year 2, 1-bedroom unit is $921, and then 2-bedroom unit is $1,152. So,
right. But based on their actual,
yes,
on their actual income.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there is a vacant unit. We are projecting is a 1249, 1-bedroom unit, and then 2-bedroom unit is a 1384. We're still way below than the maximum tax credit rent.
And is there a separate, I'm sorry, is there a waiting list developed unique to this property where a person who is not on our general waiting list can pursue a unit?
So the Georgia court, there is a 29 section 8 that's a waiting list. But that the regular 6% AMI unit, we just call that the property waiting list. But that's I don't know how many currently Georgian court has a waiting list because we are currently.
They will have their own waiting list in Housing Path soon.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Then Alan? Alan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was off mute. Yes, so they do have a waiting list at the site, and they are working on getting a waiting list individual to the site into Housing Path. We're working on getting waiting lists for all of our properties individually into Housing Path.
I'll be glad when we get that accomplished.
Almost there.
Good.
Okay, next page. So here's the sources and use. Based on as a restrict appraisal value, $33 million. And then after that, we have to, seller note has to be on the project. And then there's outstanding loan. So total equity is roughly $10.7 million. And existing depreciation reserve, 970. And then another receivable received into that part of the source. And also, after we are issuing $18 million long-term and the short-term 10.7, after that, we are acquisition and other stuff. Basically, we are using all short-term and the long-term bond during the renovation. So that means there is a gap, but that's required for that the bridge loan. So bridge loan is actually not coming from the real estate line of credit or any third-party lenders. We are basically using access the cash from that sales proceed. And also there is a year 15 transaction, which is a commission approved for that using real estate line of credit for the year 15 transaction, which is a 10 project. So basically that I split between the Georgian Court and the Shady Grove. And then there's a Newport, we using real estate line of credit for that the 3 project when we purchased from the limited partners interest in 2017, which is that split between that the Georgian Court and the Shady Grove. So end of that, the transaction is basically done at the closing. We expecting to receive over $7 million, and the bridge loan will be paying when we receiving converting the permanent loan. That is a third-party capital contribution from that the low-income housing tax credit investors. So that's basically the coming to that the commission. Next page. Here's that the stabilization period. Basically, we are underwriting 90% assuming the vacancy. I'm sorry, 95% occupancy, 5% vacancy, and then the rent and expenses grow basically 2% and 3% annually, which is the operating expenses, including that the $350,000 and then escalating that 3%. So based on that NOI, over $1 million, STAB able to raise that issue that the bond $18.3 million based on 35 years, and then based on debt service coverage 1.15, and interest rate is a 3.2, which is currently we have a cushion for 0.55 half and base. Next page.
Before you move on, can I ask a couple questions there? One, I assume the income in the stabilized pro forma includes the rent increases?
That is correct.
Okay. And then just on the interest rate below,
that's a mistake.
What's that?
I should be point as a point, not the comma.
Right. Yeah. No. But I'm confused actually about the math below. It says interest rate 2.265, plus a 0.555 cushion. That adds up to what, like 2.8 something, but we said, which is less than the 3.2. How do we get to 3.2?
Just a second, I'm opening right away.
There's a loan management fee that's added to the rate stack as well as the mortgage insurance premium, I think.
Yeah, that is.
But the MIP is down below.
Right. So there's the loan management fee that gets added into it. There's a 25 basis points on the original mortgage, but as a present value, it's reflected at a slightly higher number, perhaps in the 30-some basis points, typically.
So Karen, that's correct. So the 2.265, which is basically including that the all other stuff, which is actually I made a mistake again there. 2.645, it is the rate, and then we have a cushion 0.55. So basically that the bond yield is 2.265, and the first fee is the 0.03, and then loan management fee is the 0.35. So adding up the 2.645 plus that the cushion, which is come up to 3.2.
Okay. Yeah, let's correct that or clarify it.
Okay.
I already correct that the commission package, but
yeah, I think you've got the same numbers in the Shady Grove.
That is correct.
Slides as well. So.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So the next page is basically that our team, architect, Carl Rarity architect, and the property manager, the Edgewood, general contractor is the Hammer Builders, and the lighting investors are basically the Boston Financial. Next page. So the basically that, I'm sorry, staff is recommend to Development Finance Committee to jointly staff recommend to the commission to approval final development budget, and then authorize the acting executive director sign the general contractor contract with Hamel for amount is not to exceed $13.6 million, and authorize to acting executive director to execute a limited scope of contract not to exceed $941,300, allowed to Hamel to execute it agreement with the subcontractors and the suppliers as of Hamel worked to lock in the price prior to closing, and approve the sale of Georgian Court apartment to HOC at the Georgian Court LLC for that as is restrict appraised value $33 million, and authorize the acting exec director to enter into operation agreement with the Boston Financial and the permission to admit LightTech investors as 99.99% members of the new property ownership entity. I'm happy to answer your question.
Are there questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate the effort. Our next item is Shady Grove Apartments, approval of final development plan and budget and authorization to execute a general contractor contract.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. For the record, my name is Hyun-Suk Choi. Staff is recommend to Development Finance Committee for approval of the final development plan and the budget for the Shady Grove apartment. Authorize for the acting exec director to execute a general contractor contract with the Hamel Builders. Can you go to page number 91? So 91 and the page 92 is the exact summary. Shady Grove was originally constructed in 1980 with 144 units. The compliance period is the end in 2013. Is currently extended use period, which is the end 2028. Staff is basically resyndicating it end of November, which is the low-income housing tax credit extended until 40 years. So commission approved for that general contractors as of Hamel Builders as a general contractors, and also commission approved the selection of a Boston Financial as of low-income housing tax credit investors. Staff already submit low-income housing tax credit to the state. Staff is expecting receiving a building permit end of September next month. Next page. The property has a currently that approximately $3.7 million, and then HOC loan and the county loan, which is expecting to pay at the closing. Very similar scope of work for Georgian Court and the Shady Group. Staff is expecting starting construction December when we close. Basically at the 6th phase, each phase has a 2 building. Approximately take 70 to 90 days, which is the first phase, which is take a little bit longer, which is 90 days. And also Shady Grove has some UFAS unit, but we are creating additional, which is combined all together is 8 UFAS unit, and 3 unit is compliant with the vision and hearing unit. Can you go to that 94, page 94? So Shady Grove is located very close to the Shady Grove Metro Station, which is a very convenience for the resident. But Shady Grove is not a qualified census tract or DDA, development difficult area. So we are not able to getting additional boost for that, the Shady Grove project. Next page. Scope of work is very similar to Georgian Court and the Shady Grove. Only different is the kitchen is actually an open concept, so that they have more space for black bar spa area. And also there's more bigger space for that the living room and the kitchen because of there's no wall. So it's a more better layout than existing kitchen. But also we are removing all hazmat material, also installing the radon system, not just only we found the specific unit, we actually installing that the all first floor apartment unit. And also we are replacing existing domestic hot water with new adding to the belt. Next page. Here's a closer look for that kitchen rendering. So we are providing all brand new appliance, cabinet, countertop, kitchen backflash. Next page.
That layout, by the way, is much more contemporary and consistent with market than the existing. And I'm delighted to see us moving in that
Yep.
area of openness and light and so forth.
Thank you. Next page. So here's the existing bathroom and existing community room, which is a rendering. By the way, both project has the medicine cabinet, Commissioner Simon. So I just want to point out to you. Yep. The next page. So very similar to Georgian Court and the Shady Grove. So we are providing the entrance canopy with the lighting, so that makes sure that winter time or raining time, there's no slippery at the stairs. But also very similar to the Georgian Court and Shady Grove. Basically, the has to go up 2 stairs, and there is the old mailbox location. But we're basically creating that the new mailbox, which is to meet that the U.S. Post Service regulation. So you will actually see that right side of the main entrance, there is the mailbox there with a locker key as well. Next page. So here's the site plan, which is the right side has a 7 building, and the left side has a 5 building. So basically each side has a playground area. Also, each side has a wash and dryer laundry facility. And then one place we are creating the gym, which is next to the leasing office and the community space. And also we are creating that ADA accessible for the entire property. So you can actually see that a little bit the dark color. There's a ramp. So
thank you so much.
Next page. So here's the general contractor renovation phase. As I mentioned before, there's a 6 phase, but 2 cluster, 1 cluster basically that each cluster has like a 2 or 3. So we are starting next to that the leasing office. That's a phase 1, and the phase 2 leasing office, and then other side because we cannot. There's because there's an additional building is there, so we are currently doing that. After that, we like to finish for that the east side first, and then basically that the remaining other side will be done, and then new paving at the same time. So it's not we are done for that the east side the building first, but once that everything is done, that's the time we are doing new pavings for the parking lot. Next page. So here's that the general contractor's detailed information for each division. So total division for that is $11.3 million, and then general condition, overhead, and fee, their profit and bonding, insurance, and cost certification, which is 1.7. So adding up to $13.1 million. And then there is a general HOC general construction contingency 10% of a general contract amount, and then builder risk and FF&E adding up to $1.5 million. So pie chart, as you can see, mechanical, equipment, and the finish, and then so that's the main the cost. Next page. Very similar to the basically identical for Georgian Court Shady Group. Expecting closing, expecting receiving building permit, closing November, starting renovation for each phase. So expecting done by 3rd quarter of 2023. And this is 100% Section A, so should be able to lease faster, but basically that we have some additional cushion for that conversion, which is expecting the 2nd quarter of 2024. Next page. So as I mentioned before, I made some mistake, but so subtotal is exactly the same amount, but general contractor, which is the exact amount, but total, the early release of materials, that is the correct amount, but I will make a change for that, the commission package. So as I mentioned before, we like to get the earliest possible so that the Hamel to engage with their subcontractors so that they can lock the price. And also we are reviewing the submittal on the shop drawing so that they can order early so that we can able to deliver after when we closing. So $70,000 is not additional cost for the HOC. This is a part of their general contractors. But if we cannot able to closing this year, then we have the existing replaced reserve roughly $1.5 million to cover $941,000. Next page. So based on the as-is restrict appraised value, Shady Grove is a $33.2 million. There is we have to be put it in the seller note 9.3, and then outstanding that total equity roughly $20 million we are receiving. However, the Shady Grove is also require a bridge loan, which is roughly $13.4 million. But that money actually paid when we receiving 30 capital contribution from the investors when we converting. So that's receiving the money. As I mentioned before, there's a year 15 transaction and then Newport Park transaction. So the Georgian Court and Shady Grove, we equally divide 50-50. So end of that, the closing, we expect receiving $7.2 million. Next page. Here's a stabilization period. Based on NOI, $1.6 million able to raise $29.9 million. Based on that interest rate 3.2 and debt service cover is 1.15. I would correct that the note next time. Next page. Same team members except the architect. Bennett Frank McCarter is the Shady Grove, the main architect, but others exactly same as a Georgian Court. Next page. So staff is recommend to Development Finance Committee wish to join the staff recommendation to the commission for approval final development plan and the budget, and authorized to acting exec director sign the general contract. The contract with Hamel for the amount is not to exceed 13 point, actually 2, by the way. I will correct that. Authorization acting exec director executes a limited scope of contract not to exceed $941,300 to allow to Hamel to execute it agreement with the subcontractors or suppliers so that Hamel work the locking the price prior to closing. Approve the sales of Shady Grove apartment to HOC at Shady Grove LLC for the appraised value is $33.2 million. Authorize the acting exec director to enter into operation agreement with the Boston Financial and the permission to meet tax credit investor as of a 99.99% members of the new property owners entity. I'm happy to answer your question.
Are there questions of anyone?
No.
Hearing none. May I have the question? Or Rick, you move?
I move.
Thank you.
I move the recommendation of staff and we go to the full commission with this.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Great progress. Next, we are turning to the mortgage finance to renew contracts of the underwriting team. Jennifer, are you handling this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, I'm Jennifer Arrington, and before you is a request in accordance with the procurement policy to approve the final renewal of the bond underwriting team contract, which consists of a senior manager, a co-senior manager, and 4 co-managers. Our underwriters help to structure HOC's bond issuances and market the bonds to retail and institutional investors in order to attain the most favorable pricing, so that the proceeds of the bonds promote the financial feasibility of HOC's multifamily and single-family bond programs. The initial underwriting contract was for 2 years with 2 one-year optional renewals. You may move to page 111, please. On September 9th, 2020, the commission approved the first 1-year renewal for the team of 6 underwriters, which expires January 2022. This renewal request is the second and final of the 2 renewals, which will extend the contract through January 2023. Currently, Bank of America Securities serves as senior manager, PNC serves as co-senior manager, and Jefferies, Morgan Stanley, RBC Capital, and Wells Fargo serves as co-managers. On page 112, during the current contract period between January 2019 and June 2021, HOC has issued approximately $338 million of multifamily and single-family bonds. Through June 2021, the top performers selling 80% of all bonds were Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and PNC. Wells Fargo, as co-manager, sold 35% of all bonds, comprising 43% of multifamily bonds and 10% of single-family bonds. Most notably, it recommended the FHA risk share pass-through green bond structure for the MHDB 2021A issuance of $99.25 million, which financed the Hurston. This elevated Wells Fargo to senior manager for the transaction. Bank of America, as senior manager, has sold 33% of all bonds, comprising almost 30% of multifamily bonds and 51% of all single-family bonds. It has historically performed well across both bond programs, given that it has strong distribution network, knowledge of the market, and ability to reach institutional investors, among other things. PNC, as co-senior manager, so 12% of all bonds, consisting of 12% of multifamily bonds and 14% of single family bonds. And these numbers, of course, will fluctuate and change as we move through the fiscal year. And given that they were elevated to senior manager for the Housing Production Fund, these variables will change. You can move to page 113. It is projected in you're right there. It is projected in FY22 to issue an additional estimated $320 million worth of bonds. And this chart that you have to see here does not include the HPF, and I will add that. The initial contract, again, was for 2 years with 2 one-year optional renewals. This is, again, the second and final renewal, which must be approved by the commission in accordance with the procurement policy. We are requesting approval at this time so that we have sufficient time to complete a new procurement should the commission wish us to do that. Staff recommends approval of the final 1-year renewal of the current underwriter contracts under the same terms of the original contract. A new procurement will be completed prior to the expiration of the renewal term in January 2023. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
No.
Motion, please.
I move approval of the staff's recommendation to go to the full commission.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. We are unanimous. Thank you very much for that. And finally, we're moving to the final item on our agenda, and which is Wheaton Gateway. And we're looking forward to this.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, before Marcus and Zach begin their discussion with you, I wanted to point out, one, that we're not seeking any specific action today, but we thought it appropriate to give the committee an update as to where we are, and to conduct a discussion on certain elements of the development. I think all of you know by now that this redevelopment is of the former Ambassador apartment site, the mattress store, and the existing Lindsay Ford site. And we're pretty excited about this development in that, it'll provide a gateway into Wheaton from the west, and ease many of the concerns for the community. The commissioners who have been on the commission for a long time know that the Ambassador was particularly problematic for the community, and even more so the Lindsay Ford car dealership. So this project is really highly embraced by the community, and we're particularly excited by the level of affordability that we would be able to provide and the number of units that will be delivered to the market. The fact that this redevelopment will stimulate the economy in Wheaton, provide jobs, and amenities to that area. And so we wanted to, because the entitlement phase takes such a long time and the commission doesn't necessarily have an opportunity to hear from us and weigh in on particular aspects of the development, we wanted to pause and bring this forward for discussion only, and just hear from you, your thoughts on the development program, sustainability aspects of the development, and construction technology. And while the information isn't perfect at this time, we continue to gather information, and as we approach the time to bring forward to you items for this redevelopment for action, obviously our information will be more solid. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus and Zach, who will start the discussion, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and figure out a way to incorporate them in the design aspects, which we're design phase, which we're heading into. So Marcus and Zach.
Thank you, Karen. And just to sort of put a fine point on it, you know, this is not meant to be really a conversation about design. You know, the commission approved the sketch plan submission back in January, and so that's largely where we are, is at the sketch plan phase. But what we wanted to show you is some of the key components that go into the sort of layout of the site, but also talk about some of the sort of foundational efforts that are being made here around both green building and building efficiencies that allow us to take better advantage of the MPDU bonuses around height and density. So we can flip to the third slide with the development program. So one above that. Thank you. So this is sort of gives you a sense of what's there now and how we've laid out the initial sketch plan. And you know, as you can see, it goes from, as Karen mentioned, it goes kind of from an adaptive reuse that had really come to the end of its useful life. You know, a very inactive corner in terms of retail and any other uses. And then, of course, the dealership, which, you know, tried to be as good a neighbor as it could, but ultimately, you know, that's just not always the neighbor you want as a homeowner or residential, you know, residential uses. And so, and what comes instead is, you know, is an integrated integrated three-phase development, and we're able to produce with this plan more than 800 units. You know, we've talked about 30% affordability across the site, so that's, you know, 240 affordable units here. And while the Ambassador had 162, those were 400 square foot effective SROs, and instead we have 240, you know, plus or minus, affordable units that are going to have, normal market rate size, and are of a family mix, 1s, 2s, and 3s. So it's not just a, it's not just a 50% increase in units. It's more like a, it's going to be closer to a doubling of square footage, dedicated to these units. So, so it's a really good outcome. And obviously, instead of the concentrated affordability of the Ambassador, we're getting what we like, which is our mixed income approach. There are also some commercial opportunities here to better activate this corner, to provide some commercial amenities to the surrounding neighborhood, and obviously to the folks that'll live on top. And we've got it broken up into 3 phases. You can also see Veers Mill East on here, which was actually not included in the 800 unit count. That's probably an additional 150 units over there. So you're closing in on 1,000 units total. But for the purposes of Wheaton Gateway, that applies to the west side of Veers Mill and has these 3 phases. It is our sense that the third phase sets up nicely as an age restricted transaction, and then the first and second phase would of course be multifamily transactions, with one of those phases waiting for the other to stabilize before starting. So I'll kind of pause here just to see if there are any kind of broad or general questions about about just these numbers.
Zach, is it possible to add to the data points as we start adding these new developments about the job potential, job creation potential, and the economic contributions to the county? I think this would be a very interesting and important component as we look at this as to what contributions we're making to the Wheaton community, so that we can begin to track, as we develop across the county, an equity issue geographically to the county.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been, when in some of our sort of, broader presentations to the council and other places, we have used a software called InPlan. And so we can certainly access that software, particularly on major projects like this, and include some of that detail around, economic production and jobs, that sort of thing.
I think that's very important to the general community,
Mhm.
and would be very important to me as well. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and I'll add that, in terms of this layout, this is, this is the sketch plan submission that we're working on. It is what was presented to the community. We have generally received, I would call it guardedly optimistic and positive feedback. And so, we've made a concerted effort over the first few years of this project to do outreach, and we think, we're certainly hearing guidance from the community, but we're also hearing, hey, you're on the right track, sort of thing. But obviously, we've got design to go, and certainly there'll be more conversations around that too. But this really is kind of a good checkpoint where, you all have approved the sketch plan submission. The community has been presented the opportunity to respond to this. Obviously, we have the website, wheatongateway.com, which, is always out there. But from a design perspective, in terms of where we are, this is it's a pretty good checkpoint. We can move to the next slide and just talk about.
Zach, Commissioner Keller.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Her hand
Yes.
raised, and she's on mute.
There you go. Thank you. I would just like to add that as we look at this, and I know you guys have lots of great energy efficiency already built into this, but new roofs like that are potentially a great opportunity for solar panels and some community work. I know there's some innovative technology involved, and I don't know if that affects the compatibility with solar panels on the roof or not, but I just am going to bring that up. And I really am happy to see these drawings continue to show balconies, because of the importance of a little bit of outdoor space for everybody after what we've all been through in the last year and a half. So thank you all for taking that suggestion into heart and including it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is one of the signatures of both Hillendale Gateway and Wheaton Gateway. We're putting a lot of balconies on units, which, really is not something that gets done in the market a lot. So yeah, we were happy to integrate that comment. And so, yeah, and we will also certainly look at, whether there's some rooftop solar opportunities here at, 900th Fair, now Fenton Silver Spring. We do have some rooftop solar there where it's, with these taller buildings, it's difficult to produce enough solar to really help with the residential units on site, but it can certainly carry common area electric and other things like that. So it can be a really nice complementary use, and we'll certainly look at it here. If we go to slide 4. And so we're starting to get a little bit more into what we really wanted to discuss with you today, share with you today. And it's really more around the vision and goals here. Commissioner Keller already already highlighted one of them, which is that both at Hillendale and at Wheaton, the project teams are working on developments that would be significant steps forward for any development, residential development in the county. And so, the goal here, the vision here is really something that's not that different from HSC, right? We love our mixed income. We try to energize our residential buildings with mixed use where appropriate. And certainly we've worked with planning staff already extensively on trying to make sure there are good, useful, practically useful common spaces. But the Wheaton and Hillendale are seeking to include really what would be the highest levels of sustainability on any residential building in the county. And that is this passive house standard. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Obviously, we are also seeking that 30% affordability. Obviously, MPDU is the least we can do, and we'll certainly, as we get deeper into the project, we'll look at how to improve that 30%. But 30% affordability across the site, making sure there's a variety of unit types. One of the things you'll want to weigh in on in the future is that bedroom mix, making sure that you see sufficient unit counts at each bedroom type. And so we're certainly anticipating that discussion in the future. And as I said, trying to create commercial spaces on the ground floors that are viable given where retail is, and if it's not retail, is it some other use? And so we're certainly we're certainly thinking hard about what to put in those ground floor spaces. And given that HOC really is nearly always a very, very long-term, bordering on an infinite holder of real estate, we're trying to construct buildings here that are the most durable, that won't feel out of date in 10 years, that won't feel behind the technology in 10 years, and that provide good, predictable performance, and frankly are easier to run, which always helps property management meet expectations. But in general, everything we're talking about here is with an eye toward durability, and that's particularly poignant here given the issues that the ambassador really had down the stretch. And then in terms of some of the specific sustainability goals, I mentioned passive house. There are no passive house residential multifamily deals in the county, and it is one of the core goals of the executive's new climate action plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so HOC would be putting on the ground buildings. Hillendale will start construction next year. Wheaton would be the second. And so HOC would really be leading the way in terms of getting passive house multifamily into the market. And, if you go to the West Coast or you go to Europe, California is typically 10 years ahead of us, and Europe's typically 10 years ahead of California. So what we're trying to do is basically copy and paste some of those best practices. So while it hasn't been done in this county, it is by no means bleeding edge. Passive house is a very established standard in Europe for decades, and certainly has a track record in, on the West Coast. And, there are, Montgomery County is very focused on this, not just the climate action plan, but they've recently passed legislation around tax credits for high performance buildings. Obviously, for HOC, that's not necessarily useful, but it does tell you, it is the county very clearly telling you where it wants buildings to go. And so, we are skating to the puck here. Like, this is where the county clearly wants its new buildings to go, and HOC is leading by example. I don't know if there are any specific questions there. We're going to get into more detail on all these things, but this is just sort of the overture here. Go to the next slide, please. Obviously these buildings are large, because we haven't done any architecture. What you're seeing here is, boxy, and it's certainly emphasizing the size of these buildings. Once we get into architecture, we'll obviously, there's obviously a long way to go in terms of that. But you know, what's really happening here is that typically in a market like this, you know, Wheaton, you know, it's difficult to build a high-rise construction because of construction type. You know, normally you're into concrete, and you know, markets like Wheaton don't normally support that. And the reason why this has been an important discussion is that, you know, HOC typically does a high level of affordability, in this case 30%, and the county affords us and others who do increased affordability heightened density bonuses. But what has been a problem with using those bonuses is that it often triggers a more expensive construction type, and so it makes it difficult, if not impossible, to go from stick over podium to a mid or high rise format to capture that extra density without making the building too expensive to build. And so one of the reasons staff has spent years, frankly, looking at this prescient system and looking at other alternative systems is to try to find a way to build as close to parity on a per unit basis as we would get from a stick over podium building. And so you can see the result here is way more than the 5 or 6 floors that you would get out of a garden building. And so this is that we're recapturing all that lost housing, and we're doing it at a cost per unit that allows us to stay financeable. And so that's really one of the core theses of Hillendale and of Wheaton. And the master plan wants us to do this. This is totally consistent with the master plan. It was looking for this density on Veers and University, and it certainly shows that HOC is going to do everything it can to put housing on the ground. We can go to the next slide, and I'll just to show you the backside, so you can see the step down, and obviously that little building there is McDonald's, not us. But you can see that phase 3 is very intentionally stepping down, because across the street from that smaller building, from the phase 3 there is the beginning of single family communities. And that's East Avenue running off University there. And so, we've very, very deliberately made a step down there. We also think it being a senior use further helps to make it kind of a gentler intensity of use. But at the same time, still, we didn't just say, okay, we're just going to stick townhomes there, right? We're still trying to find that compromise position between being sensitive to our neighbors, but also making sure that we don't miss an opportunity to put housing on the ground. You can sort of see, and again, because this isn't really architectural, it doesn't, it's not designed to look pretty, but to show intent. And if you look at at that phase 3, you can see on the front of phase 3, you can see those 5 kind of almost bay looking bump outs. And what that's eventually going to be are treatments to look like the fronts of townhomes, to further give the single family communities the sense that they're looking at townhomes rather than a 5-story residential building. We also, and to put those bump outs in, we also moved phase 3 closer to the Veers Mill building. So pulling it away and giving a greater setback for the bulk of that phase 3 from the single family communities. And so, a lot of thought is going into to what to do about phase 3, and we're hopeful that so far it seems like we're getting the sense we're on the right track, and so we're going to continue to try to find that balance where we're still able to keep mission at the forefront. And one of the other things you don't see here is there's a ton of internal circulation. And so one of the things that planning, and particularly the planning director, really likes about where we've gone so far is how much internal and hidden circulation there is. So we used, maybe a little bit hard to tell, but there is a significant slope from Veers Mill as you come west on University. And so we've used that to sort of shove the parking decks into the hill. and use that slope to create some circulation, to create a significant amount of circulation under the buildings below grade, which both maximizes the land for housing and open space, but it also makes things safer for pedestrians. It also keeps cars, hidden, frankly, a lot more, which is good for just the quality of being outside on this property. And it also helps to to take some of the pressure off the roads themselves. Certainly in Montgomery County, everybody's got a traffic problem. So this project, we did a lot of work on trying to get the cars who want to come here off as efficiently as possible and allow them to do as many movements on site as possible.
Zach,
yes.
can I just ask one question?
Absolutely.
On that drawing, is that parking above ground that I'm looking at by McDonald's?
Yes. So just to sort of walk you through it. So you've got McDonald's surrounded by the surface parking, and then the surface parking for McDonald's hits kind of a concrete wall there. And if you look on the right side of that concrete wall, if you look closely, I think you can see that there are two openings.
Yes.
And so one of those openings is actually for service only. So it's loading, unloading for residential moving trucks, deliveries, and so forth. The other is for entrance for the commercial and residential parking. And so one way into the property is to come south on Beers Mill or north on Beers Mill, turn onto University West, or actually come across Beers Mill, going westbound to University and turning into the deck there. And then you can actually access the entire, once it's built out, you can access the entire site underneath the ground. So you actually pull in. Great. And you actually drive under. So if you look on the left side of that corner building, you can see like there's a little red set of blocks over there. And then you can see the dividing road, the mid-block break road between phase 1 and phases 2 and 3. So that's really the only above grade road. And that's also something that the planning department wanted to see. They wanted a mid-block break. But if you pull in, coming back to University again, if you pull into that deck, or if you're a service truck and you pull in, you actually go underneath that mid-block break road and you come out. You actually come out on east. So if you come back to the McDonald's building, I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk you through it because you can't see my cursor, but come back to the McDonald's building and actually go up east to phase 3, where you see some of the blue, you see kind of a blue block. And you see an entrance there. That's actually the exit. That's actually where one of the options to come out. So you can actually drive under the entire site. You can access 1, 2, or 3 underground from that university entrance. There are also other entrances that come off the mid-block break as well. But it's one of the things that took a lot of tweaking and talking with planning. But we're really pleased at how this internal circulation has come out.
And on that wall next to McDonald's, I hope we pay some attention to what kind of treatment we have so it doesn't look ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. And planning, frankly, wouldn't, even if we were trying to make it look like a big gray wall, which we certainly are not, planning would certainly not allow us to do that. And that will be a subject of a lot of discussion, will be the treatments of the parking here as we move through entitlement.
All right.
Zach, is it
Yes.
possible that as we're evaluating solar, we could be talking with McDonald's about a partnership and including their rooftop as well?
I mean, we could certainly approach them with that, and see if they would want to
get more area that we could include from any source, and partnerships are always good.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could do that. Yep.
Okay.
And one thing I should also mention, it's not super clear on this, but one of the parcels that Lindsay Ford owned that we bought, if you look sort of diagonally across east from McDonald's, you can kind of see there's a circle with 2 paths leading to it. It's otherwise an open space. It's that corner. It's kind of that pizza pie slice that has east on one side and it's I think Upton on the other. But you can see there's kind of a circle with 2 paths. So we actually acquired that parcel as part of the Lindsay Ford acquisition, and that will become a pocket park. So that's
Great.
another benefit of this development. Right now, it's got cars parked on it. So, so I imagine that'll be viewed as an upgrade.
Great.
So we'll go to the next slide. And this is where we get sort of away from the layout and really into, why staff is going the direction it has, and beginning around sustainability. And we've been making these arguments for a long time. These are even amongst ourselves in getting to where we are. And obviously this is a year, it seems like very few others, around climate emergency. And so, we were already headed in this direction, but it just feels like there's even more urgency than ever. And but what's interesting about the sustainability argument is that for HOC and its residents, it's, yes, there is, as this exhibit shows, there's sort of the obvious, like the planet, right? The environment. So there's definitely that piece, but there are also other parts to green building than just, the environment. Frankly, these buildings are more comfortable. We'll get into that a little bit. They're more predictable, and they're nicer to live in. And the other thing they do is they produce very low utility bills. And so there is real value to HOC as a long-term holder in these investments, but there's also value to residents because they have lower utility bills, and utilities can often be one pretty solid part of, inequality. A lot of times buildings are affordable because they're old, and they're affordable from a rent perspective, but then you got to pay the utility bill on that old building. And so, there's a real equity component here by giving folks at a number of different AMI levels access to buildings that don't have that kind of hidden rent when they get that, $250 utility bill. And so there are lots of reasons to do more than code minimum, even as high as the code is in Montgomery County, but we just wanted to lay out that it's, it is more than just the direct impact on the environment. And the next slide really gets into what some of those details are. And so just to walk through it, and starting with the most obvious, with resilience and durability. So passive house buildings are designed to handle the extreme weather that appears to be a part of climate change. These buildings are able to resist, frankly, they're able to stay stable inside from a living perspective, despite, great fluctuations outside. And they're also easier to maintain because these technologies are not 10,000 gears. They're actually very simple technologies that, that cause your air conditioning to come on less. So that means it's just not going to get worn out as fast. You can buy less expensive units. You can buy simpler units. One of the best things about passive house buildings is that they do a really, really good job of controlling humidity, which is one of the most insidious things when it comes to long-term ownership of buildings. Is really the humidity gets into these buildings and just slowly over time wears them out. Obviously, lower energy costs, that's an easy one. But one of the things of note that we do see is that the market more and more is looking for that differentiation, whereas even 5 years ago you could tell people that it was an Energy Star building and they probably didn't care, but the market more and more, for both moral reasons but also pocketbook reasons, is looking for that kind of differentiation. And the other thing is the code continually changes. The county recently adopted significantly higher standards. And you can expect Montgomery County, as a progressive county, to continue to do that sort of thing. And so you don't want to build code minimum and then and knowing that in 5 years you're going to actually be out of code or when they change it again. So so those are some really good technical reasons. But some of the other pieces are, you've got infrastructure bills floating around at the federal level. You've got, you've got fossil fuel companies trying to reinvent themselves, but there are more and more and more dollars out there that are looking for buildings that are doing this, and there aren't really that many. So being early in our neck of the woods can really allow us to avail ourselves of some significant pots of money, and obviously that helps us finance these buildings in a way that is more efficient, so that we can do more housing elsewhere. But I think you don't really need to know much more than the experience at Paddington Square. We just put some solar panels on a roof, right? Like, that's all we did. But like, the energy and enthusiasm and optimism that was a part of that celebration for putting solar panels on a roof. Right now, it's a little more than that, and it's the community solar element is pretty exciting. But what we're doing here is introducing passive house buildings to a county that doesn't have any, and it's actually a county that has some pretty old housing stock. And so there is no competition right now to be the green builder for Montgomery County. And so, the more of this we do, the more it becomes a part of how people view HOC. And it also creates really good partnership opportunities. People want to work with folks that are doing this kind of stuff. But when it comes down to the resident level, there are so many different ways these buildings are more comfortable. These are quieter buildings. Because of the way the units are sealed, you don't smell what your neighbor's cooking. And you get less turnover. People don't want to move, because where else are they going to move that has this sort of a living experience? And lease up is faster. Again, it's such a level of differentiation that it could be years before there's another one of these buildings in the county. I mean, we're 3 or 4 years ahead of people, at least. So there's a real opportunity for differentiation, for much better resident experience, and because of the better resident experience, better management performance of the building.
In looking at the LEED classification V4, you're emphasizing comfort here, but there's the safety issues, there are the universal design issues, and all of that is just, again, looking ahead at what's going to be required by changing demographics and changing codes. So I just can't tell you how excited I am about this. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's funny because both in accessibility and in green building, that expertise is not staff, right? It's not expertise we have. So that's why we're so pleased to have found people that are experts in the space and are willing to be patient with us, but to work with us. And so, one of the things we pride ourselves on as a real estate team is we're really good at some stuff, but there's also stuff we absolutely know we do not know. So we really make an effort to go find those people who do, get them on our team, and try to start learning, getting up that learning curve. So what we hope the commission will also see here is that, it's not like we hired some green guru and they're on staff and we locked them in a room and said, don't come out until you've come up with 12 great ideas. So this is demonstrating that even when staff doesn't have a particular expertise, we can find partners that can help us do these things.
Exactly.
And the commission,
I'm sorry, yeah. I just hope you'll identify some of those additional issues when you talk about comfort and well-being, because we all know that if people are healthier, their life is more productive, more emotionally supportive, and mental health and physical health are improved. So it's just not comfort, it's health and well-being as well.
Absolutely. Commissioner Kelleher?
I would just add, I do not want us to underrate the comfort issues. As someone who waited until the tender age of 53 to marry and spent most of my adult decades in multifamily housing, I can tell you the noise factors and the smell factors are not trivial in terms of your quality of life. And literally are the reasons I moved to a single family dwelling, which I didn't need. I'm way overhoused by all the standards, but it got me away from everybody else's fights and arguments and whatever they were cooking for dinner, which I did not plan to have that evening. So I think all around, we very much appreciate what you're doing here. And the fact that you're comfortable going out to get expertise is a sign of the maturity of the and professionalism of the staff. So thank you so much.
Zach,
Yes, sir.
I want to introduce, since we are trying to create a perfect situation here in terms of what we're trying to do with building the best box. I want to add another piece to it because it goes back to the earlier slide. It talks about the people.
Yeah.
As our communities are becoming more diverse, as they're becoming more culturally enriched and sensitive, I think we have got to embrace that in terms of how we approach what we build. It does express not just being great architecture, which these probably should definitely be great architectural statements, but also, to me, we've got to deal with the matter of how we effectively use open space, and not just creating a passive little park, but how we really get people engaged into the community that we are building. And I think some of that sometimes that I've never heard since I've been with the commission is that we very rarely say that one of our partners who we deal with is the arts and culture environment or community. And they could offer a great deal to you as we were thinking through this in terms of lighting and spacing and colors and utilization of spaces that may create a way that you can have artistic classes going on somewhere, or you've got program events going on in the streets that can be closed off, or you've got an opportunity to create an open market space certain days on the weekend. I mean, we've got to think about those things as well as thinking about environment and solar panels and all those other kind of things. That's we can build great boxes, but people have to live in them. And we want people to have a rich experience in terms of what we're trying to do. So I just want to throw it on the table to you, Zach. We can talk more about this, but I'm just really, this is an area where I've been spending a lot of time in the last 10 years about how you integrate the arts and culture into community architecture, okay? And I want to talk a little bit more how we can embrace that and really make this an overall rich experience. So I just want to mention that to you. Good discussion. I think we're moving in the right direction, but I want to just push the envelope just a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yep, and we look forward to that discussion. On the next slide and around costs, because obviously we're both trying to do these things, but obviously we're trying to stay, very conscious of cost because we ultimately still need to finance these things. One of the most interesting charts that we've come across came from from Pennsylvania's Housing Finance Agency, because Pennsylvania is part of their tax credit program, their QAP. They actually have passive house as a way to get certain points. Maryland does not, but Pennsylvania does this. And as a result, because you know that LIHTC developers will do anything they have to get the requisite points to get those 9% awards, it's producing passive house affordable housing in Pennsylvania. And as you can see, there are a lot of dots on this. And really what this chart shows very simply is, that you actually have, you don't often have apples to apples in this stuff, but you really have apples to apples, right? You have developers that are all competing on the same rules, that are building this, they're building the same idea, right? It's affordable housing, 9% deals. And there's total data transparency because of the submission of these applications. And so, this is a really rich data set. And what you see are the lighter colored dots are the conventional deals, and the darker dots are the passive house deals. And then the dotted lines in the center show you really where the average is. And what you can see is that, first of all, there's almost no premium whatsoever in reality, right? there's almost no premium in terms of what the cost was to build these projects, whether it was passive house or not. And you can also see that not all the light colored dots are on the bottom of the graph and all the dark colored dots on the top of the graph, right? They're just kind of scattered amongst each other. So what that tells us and what that made our guiding principle is that this shouldn't have to cost much more, if at all, to deliver on this. And so that's been a big guiding principle for us. And so moving to the next slide, we think this uses Hillendale because that's obviously where we've got, a totally designed building. We've got construction numbers that are real time and all that sort of thing. And what we came away with is, for a first try, which is Hillendale, it'll be the second try, we'll do better. But what we found is that on a cost per unit basis, from a cost per gross square foot basis, Bozzuto's overall average, and what was great is that we were basically, Bozzuto was the general contractor or pre-con advisor on our Shady Grove deal, where they're the GC, and the Hillendale Gateway deal, where they're the pre-con advisor. And so we happen to have the exact same GC, basically out in the market at the exact same time, pricing west side at Shady Grove, which is the traditional stick over podium, and getting cost information for us for Hillendale Gateway, which is obviously not stick over podium. And they also were willing to share with us costs from two other deals they had recently done, one in Silver Spring, one in College Park, which were not HOC deals. And they were also willing to share with us their general average for stick over podium. And that average is about 146 a square foot. And so as you can see, Hillendale Gateway, despite the fact that it is not stick over podium, and despite the fact that it is passive house and none of these other buildings are passive house, is, less than 2% higher than their overall average. And Bozzuto does a lot of construction. It's actually cheaper on a gross square foot basis than Shady Grove, and slightly more expensive than those other two deals. And that's because the reality is, it's not that nobody is making the choice in reality between passive house and code minimum. Nobody makes that choice. The reality is there are 100 different choices that are going into these projects. And some of those choices are to use brick instead of hardy, right? And it has nothing to do with passive house. And so, but it's one of the many practical choices that gets made with these projects. And the reality is that's why you get that scatter plot that you saw in the previous slide, is because people aren't trying to build the cheapest thing. It's just a matter of where they choose to spend, their money. And we just think some of that ought to be focused on passive house. And obviously we're not going to sacrifice the look and feel of the building to do it. But we were really excited about having come out at near parity, despite the fact that we were building much taller and we were pursuing passive house. And then the next slide, the next slide shows you that sort of hypothetical, scenario where, let's see here. I think this got clipped. Might have to skip this one. Yeah, we'll just skip this slide. It got cut in half. And we mentioned earlier, so on the next slide, mentioned earlier that the executive recently released his climate action plan, and I'm not sure if you can, see the print there, but I'll just read you what's under buildings. High performance buildings should be equitably available to all county residents. Increase energy conservation and efficiency, and decrease fossil fuel use in all buildings, with the county leading by example with its own building portfolio. Support sustainable carbon neutral building design. Phase in building requirements while providing transparency to residents, businesses, and developing the market knowledge to best meet those requirements. Expand incentives, financing, and programs to construct or upgrade to resilient, efficient commercial and residential buildings, and create demand for jobs and grow the workforce by transitioning to resource efficient, low carbon resistant buildings. I mean, that's exactly what HOC is doing here with these buildings, and it's doing it ahead of anybody else. So we're right there on board with the executive's climate action plan. And in fact, we're already actually putting it, putting it into reality. So, it's fortunate that we started thinking about these things a few years ago because of some of the partners that we were coming across, but it's obviously dovetailing very nicely with where the county wants to go. And we're pleased about that. And in the same way the county wants to lead by example with its own building portfolio, that's precisely what HOC is doing. And just to sort of wrap it up here and talk a little bit about both the current construction technology that we're giving a go at Hillendale and potentially Wheaton, and also about what could be next. Is the next slide is prescient. We've talked to, we've presented to the commission on prescient, so I won't get into deep detail, but the general idea here was, again, to go find a system that allowed us to capture those MPDU bonuses without without rendering the deal infeasible because of the construction technology. And I should say that one of the things about prescient that's so important is that that design building information modeling, that BIM system, that you already have the computer model for the entire building in a three-dimensional format, and that includes your MEP, which is often some of the biggest issues on site during construction is when your plumber drew a plan and your architect didn't see that it actually would require a copper pipe going through the middle of a big beam. This system will detect those conflicts during the design phase. So where instead of having to figure it out on site once everything's already drawn and you're mobilized. And the other important thing is this is not only getting us those MPDU bonuses, but this is a non-combustible format. And so from a safety perspective, these buildings are non-combustible. They are much, much safer from yet another perspective. And they're faster to erect, which means we get housing on the ground faster, we get units to people faster, and we can start leasing up sooner. And lastly, just to give you a sense of what we're going to be investigating, and obviously you all will make these decisions on Wheaton Gateway going forward. But one of the things we're looking at is on the last slide is mass timber. And given the ride that we all just went on with lumber prices over the last year, you may ask yourself, why mass timber? Well, the reality is that, obviously that price spike in timber had more to do with the supply chain than it did that it had to do with anything related to the economics of wood. But the fact is there are some really key reasons why we might want to do one of the phases at Wheaton this way, or all the phases perhaps. Mass timber allows you to build as tall as prescient does. And so it still allows us to keep the opportunity to go after these MPDU bonuses without, massive cost implications. But the fact is that mass timber is also greener than steel. And the systems are strong enough to be built to these these very high heights. Again, this is not something new for Europe. Mass timber is done throughout Europe, and so while again this seems new to us, these are technologies that have been at work for a long time in Europe. They are also speedy to assemble. But they are much less, the reason they're greener is they're much less energy intensive to produce than steel and concrete. So it's not just greening the building, but it's actually looking back at the production of these materials and trying to be greener at that level too. And frankly, and so the building on the left is actually a commercial building in DC. They're also really attractive. Like it's not just another steel and glass building. Like there's this warmth to what would otherwise be, that sort of cosmopolitan steel and glass that's in every major city. So they're really attractive. And the biggest challenge to mass timber is that it's new to the US. So getting through code, making sure it's code compliant, making sure you can get through permitting will be some of the things that we're going to investigate. So as we are designing Wheaton right now, we are designing Wheaton to use the same system Prescient that was used at Hillendale. So, we're proceeding with things that we're more familiar with. We're just letting you know that this is something you may hear more from us as we investigate it. And just like Commissioner Simon said earlier, we do our best on each deal and then we try to do better the next time. And so this is one of the themes that we think, one of the directions we think that could be useful to investigate. So that's the update. We wanted to give you these major themes and make sure that it still felt right to you. And obviously we have a long way to go. You have many approvals to consider, but we wanted to, just wanted to sort of check back in on this as we get ready to ramp up and go beyond sketch plan.
I'll just jump in with a couple of very quick comments. One is very exciting, very exciting to hear, how cutting edge, or at least in this country, apparently this is, and, that you guys have been putting in all this work and this investigation. To build on what Jackie said earlier about sort of quantifying jobs, I would recommend if you haven't already, quantifying potential energy savings, both the cost savings as well as the carbon savings, and having that information available. Two, again, I'm sort of on the cutting edge stuff. I appreciate that you said, you wanted to think sort of 10 years in advance. And what I'm hearing is, Europe has been doing this for decades. California has been doing it for a decade. I think this is a great project for us to the extent that we're looking more towards, catching up with Europe than if what's 10 years ahead for them. And so just encouraging you to continue those investigations that it sounds like you're already doing. And if Pennsylvania has already been doing this for a while, we've got some catching up to do. So, but great work on this.
Thank you.
I think too, related to the last point, we have an obligation to press and lead the way in legislation that makes this more marketable and more feasible to develop. And it also, we heard at Paddington, our elected council members and executives saying that they are determined to reduce the obstacles that slow down and prevent this kind of technology being used and usable. The barriers that are in the code writing and code enforcement and inspection processes. So I think it's at the right time for maybe us to be educating our legislators about the potentials of this from all of the advantage and riding that wave. But I just really treasure the investment of energy and time and commitment that the staff has made to looking at these things that provide environment and enhance people's quality of living. We owe it from an equity point of view, and we owe it from a moral point of view in my mind, and I am just ecstatic to see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that we ought to consider maybe modifying or just sending this tape deck with a memo to the Fed committee and to the county executive. I think it's clearly we're going along the same line that they want everybody to go along, but they also don't know about it. And this is a way for us maybe to show them And volunteer to do a briefing if they want.
Yes.
Certainly. Okay.
And one other just quick note on prescient. It is our understanding there is a second prescient deal coming through. That's not ours. So that should also help. And they may be a few months ahead of us. Maybe it's actually the land next to the Pooks Hill Marriott. That develop. It's actually across from Pooks Hill Tower and Pooks Hill Court, across Pooks Hill. There's open land over there that there's a developer that acquired that land, which was already entitled, and they're going to do prescient there too. So directly to your points about making sure DPS has the time they need and has collaboration they need with us, it will help to have another project there too, saying, tapping its foot, saying, this is here. You're not just doing this for one developer, one project. So.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Right. Well, this was quite a mouthful today. But, I think we managed to get through all the materials efficiently. And so we thank you for your time. And if there are any follow-up questions, please let us know. We'll incorporate your comments and respond to questions that are still to be answered before the commission meeting.
Well, I think that the quality of the discussion that we've had today, staff and commissioners, is important, and we need to try and find time to be having a little more conversation on the philosophy and the vision and the direction, and be sure that it's being shared with the commission members who don't sit on the DevFin or the finance committees, so that they have the benefit of this as well, if they aren't able to attend these committee meetings, which are available to them, but work conflicts and so forth get in the way. So communication is just terribly important, and thank everyone for their patience today, but I think this was well worth the investment. And thank you to all the staff. And if there's no other business to come before us, we stand adjourned.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.